right. Well, I'm glad the timing has worked out to make this happen. You've been highly requested. I've had a lot of highly requested guests, and you've been one of them. But I didn't want to do a family member too early on. But I think the timing is good. So I think today is the 24th, and then I think it's next Thursday. I don't know if that's October 2nd is when they're doing the kind of the honorary night for Grandpa, your dad, at LaCrosse. So I think this is when this episode will debut on that day. So
awesome. That's a good lead-in. So
yeah, I figure that'd be a good time to kind of release that. Actually, one of the questions that I had that I've really never thought of until now: when did you get it, and who gave it to you? When did you get the nickname Flying Bryan?
That was given to me by Todd Bailing down in Madison. Todd and Eddie, Ed Kukla had their show down there, and I don't know which one of them, but I think it was Todd. But that was my nickname when I went down there. So a lot of great things happened when I went to Madison. So I got a lot of, that thing stuck, and it was a lot of support from those guys, and I just enjoyed every aspect of that portion being down that Madison racetrack.
Yeah, and we'll definitely gonna get into talking about that. I know Matt Kenseth was down there racing at that time as well, so we'll definitely kind of touch on that. But yeah, kind of where I end up, really start with anyone, and I'll kind of start with this too. Bryan is my uncle, not my dad, nor my brother. It actually, I wouldn't think I have to address that one, but it's actually surprising the number of people every once in a while that have asked me if Tom Reffner was my dad. But hey, it's not a big family to mix up, but I've gotten asked it enough.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of a trend, so like a family member goes on. So, I don't have any kids. So, when people see you come around racing, I think a lot of them just assumed if they don't know the family that well. So, but yeah.
Yeah. So you grew up in Rudolph, Wisconsin, but even before really anything racing, what were you doing as a kid?
Getting into a lot of trouble usually. Me and your dad, we were two kids. Rudolph was at that time, I remember it well, had a sign out on Highway 34 that said population 347. So
now I think it's like 411.
Yeah. So when you have a small population, you had to entertain yourself a lot. So, but no, we grew up on a dirt road. You know it well. So it's got to be a mile between the two county roads, and that we lived on a farm. We didn't farm, but it was an old farmhouse, and had 80 acres across the Plum Road was the dirt road we lived on, and then the house was on another 40. So we had a lot of area to roam, and good or bad, we roamed a lot as we got older. For whatever reason, and it's kind of strange. I mean, that I ended up in racing late models because your dad and we grew up on motorcycles. It's kind of crazy. We didn't end up racing motorcycles because we were on them. I had seen a picture of me on a little mini bike, and I don't know the timing well, but Dad had a Rupp dealership, but Jim Bac also had a Rupp dealership, and we had a Rupp mini bike, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, I am tiny. And I had to ask my mom, how old was I in that? And she goes, you were about 4. I'm like, 4? Dad put me on a mini bike when I was 4. I couldn't, my feet wouldn't touch, and I was a runt back then, so my feet didn't touch, so I had to sit in front of the seat on the bars. So I sat the bars here so my feet would touch, and I wasn't old enough or strong enough to start it, and I think Baird could start his, and he might started mine, but yeah, we rolled them all the time. I mean, you could about pry us off of it, and it was kind of funny because you look at people nowadays and they go progress people up, as fast as they can. Well, about the time that I could sit on the seat and my feet could touch the ground, all of a sudden a Rupp, their next one was a Roadster, Rupp Roadster. So it had a snowmobile clutch on it, so it would go pretty good. It didn't shift, but it had a snowmobile clutch.
Okay, yeah.
So we each got one of those. Well, now I'm back to feet don't touch the ground again. You'd had to start with it on its side, get it going, and then up on there. And then about the time we grew into that, before we even grew into it, next thing you know, a Rupp, they actually had a motorcycle. And that one, I think it had 3 speeds or something, little, I think 80 cc engine on it. But it would go, so we terrorized that road up and down. And then I don't know when it was about age-wise, but Baird ended up getting a Suzuki 185. And neither one of us were big enough to get on a real dirt bike, but yeah, he got a dirt bike. Well, of course, being brotherly competition, I'm like, well, if he's getting something that's a dirt bike, I have to have something.
Yeah.
So then I ended up with a Yamaha 250, way too big for anything I was able to drive or ride. And so we just, we were in school by then. We get out of school, and it was like, get on the bikes up and down that road, on through the woods, whatever we could do. And we were actually getting pretty good. We were launching ourselves off of ant hills back then. Them farms and ant hills would get pretty high.
Yeah.
And I guess one good story out of that era was we would, in the summer, the weeds would grow pretty tall, and we would roar down Plum Road, and we would get to where we'd slide it, and then we'd gas it as hard as we could to shoot up the driveway. And the goal was to see how fast, because we're going a little faster and see how you could go. If you had to bail, you just stood up and you just launched yourself into the weeds, But so we got pretty good at that. So we were always practicing to see who could go faster. We watched the speedometer. We were getting up to 40-some miles an hour and putting it in the slide and gas it and shoot up the driveway. Well, the one day I'm out on the road, and I don't know what Baird was doing. But all of a sudden he's coming, and I didn't know he was coming down the driveway. I couldn't see him. And the timing was perfect. I'm sliding in, and I hit his just behind the front wheel, full speed. And it's probably an aerobatic 10, because I hit behind his front wheel. It launched me, so I didn't, it flipped me up, so that flung me up. My feet go over. I probably did 1.5 cartwheels. And as I was going over, I hit his handlebar. So I get the wind knocked out of me by hitting my handlebar. A little trauma to the groin as we're going over, and I landed on the driveway, knocked me out, and I'm just like, I can't breathe. I'm laying there, and Bear's looking at me, and I'm not moving, He starts running up the driveway. I killed him. and we're pretty young yet, and he's running up the driveway, and I'm trying to breathe. I can't catch my breath. I can't get any air in yet. And then, I'm hurting. And all of a sudden, Dad had a little black gremlin, and it had a 3-speed in there. All of a sudden, I hear that thing just floored and gravel spitting, and he hit second gear coming. We had a long driveway, but I'm laying there, I can't move. And I'm like, Dad's gonna run me over with the gremlin, for cripe's sake, And he comes sliding in there, because all he heard was, I killed him. By that time, I started getting my breath and come to and stuff. But yeah, that was we were never ending in trouble with those motorcycles.
Did you ever think about actually racing them?
Never did. We built our own motocross track in that 80 across the street, and we were tearing the ground up pretty good. And then there's a creek that went through there, and we get some big ruts, and we'd get 5-gallon pails, and we'd get mud out of the creek, and then we'd fill in our ruts on our little motocross track. And the one day we're hauling a lot of mud, and hands are covered with mud, and we're dumping them in all our ruts, and I go to wipe my hands off on a tree. It was a small tree, and I'm, wiping and shaking it, and all of a sudden I hear a bzzz. I look up, and there was about 1.5 foot paper wasp nest up there, and they're pouring out of there. I guess when you shake their tree, they get pretty upset. I take off running, and I'm literally covered with hornets. I'm running to the house. Why I didn't run to the creek and jump in, I don't know. I'm just heading to the house. didn't know what I was going to do when I got the house, go into the house and bring the bees in or what, I don't know. But it's 100, well, that's got to be, 100-yard run, and by the time I got there, they were pretty much giving up. But I was literally, every surface that was exposed, I was literally solid wasps or hornets, and my face was stung. And they gave up by the time I got to the house, and I'm sitting there, and my mom's trying to rub some stuff on me. And
Probably Watkins salve.
yeah, I don't know what it was. Who knows back then? Hard telling. Well, being big protective brother, our dad had a 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun. I think Baird had a 14-gauge, and I had a 20-gauge. And so while they're doctoring me up, Baird sneaks the shot, because we weren't allowed to have the shotgun. So he sneaks it out, and he gets down close to dusk, and he goes, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know, pretty sore." He goes, "When it gets dark, we're going to go take care of them bees." I'm like, "All right, what are we doing?" It's like, "Well, don't tell Dad I got the shotgun." I'm like, "Okay." He goes,
And how old were you?
I bet you we were maybe 13,
Okay.
maybe 12. I mean, not old enough to have that shotgun, but so we go over there, and Baird's like, "You aim at the top, and I'm just going to hit it with this 12-gauge, And we stand there, and all of a sudden, he starts lighting off the shells, and that was a single shot. We were only allowed to have a single shot shotgun, so
Yep.
I popped my one off and opened it up, popped another one, and yeah, there was nothing left of the old hornet's nest when we were done with it. But yeah, that was quite an experience.
I haven't heard of extinguishing hornets with shotguns, but
Yeah, there was nothing
guess it
left
works.
of it. Yeah. That the 12-gauge, and I don't know if it held 4 shells or whatever, but by the time he emptied it, it was pretty good. And it's kind of funny. The first time we snuck that shotgun out, Baird's like, I don't know, I think this thing kicks pretty good. He says, "We better prop my arm against the tree here before we fire it off." So he's got the shotgun, big elm tree behind him, and he fires it off. And I mean, it kicked and drops the shotgun. Oh! So we were already experiencing how well it kicked, but yeah, that was some of our entertainment. I mean, we had guns. If we weren't riding motorcycles, we were out shooting something. So yeah, that was my childhood growing up. Dad was on the road a lot racing then, and then those are early teens, so we only saw him once in a while because, he was racing all the time. So Mom kind of tried to keep us out of trouble, but that was a pretty big challenge.
Now, yeah, and kind of talking about him being on the road often racing, what was your first earliest memory of actually either of his race cars in general, or going to the racetrack?
So I don't, in the racetrack, we were taken when we were pretty little, we play up in the dirt and bleachers and stuff. So I don't remember much of that other than being at a track. None of it really sticks out. I do remember when we were first allowed to go to the race shop, because we always wanted to go, At this time, my dad was winning a fair amount of races, anywhere you went in town, that was, his name's out there. He's in the papers, it's kind of a big deal, So I wanted to go to the race shop. So I think it was on a Saturday or Sunday. It was a weekend, and we were allowed to go sweep the shop because most of the guys had gone home because they didn't, they had work to do. They wanted a bunch of kids in the way, and that was his living back then. So, so we were able to sweep the shop. So that was big time fun then. So we did that, on off weekends or when we were there. So that was my first memory of being around the car. Didn't look at the car much, just it was fun to be in the race shop and be able to sweep the floors. So I don't know if Baird had that much positives about it, sweeping, but our next, I think we got to where we were probably 15. Baird was probably 15 at that time. Neither one of us had a license. And then the ASA or the AMC stuff was in full bore, and they were building their own engines and stuff, and those engines were high maintenance, and they were pulling them all the time. And so my dad decided he was going to train me and Baird on how to pull an engine. So he went all through all the motions with us. So then we got paid $25 for every time we'd pull a motor out. They put it in. We were only allowed to take it out. So I thought that was great. You know, probably not a great thing for Dad, because we asked Mom, did the motor blow up? Did the motor blow up? Did he have any engine problems? You know,
Yeah.
We didn't care if he won or not. Did he have any engine problems? Because then we can go to the race shop and we can pull that engine and get $25.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was our big key to going there, and then that progressed into, you know, actually going there, and you know, we were given some tasks here to help, and that was when I became amazed at you know, Pete Hofferman. You know, at that time he was really young, and I was utterly amazed at. We had the back room, and they were building the engines there, you know, and they'd have all them pieces laid out, and the pistons and the rods and the crank, and all meticulously laid out. Pete was a perfectionist, and I just couldn't believe all those metal parts could get put together and put in that engine. And then that would, when it came to life, you know, it would rumble and shake that shop. And to me, that was the instant I became a motorhead. I just fell in love with engines. I'm like, I couldn't understand how they worked. I'm like, how does all this make noise and horsepower?
Yeah.
And these cars can zoom around, and so I really wanted to understand how that engine worked. I mean, I was more interested in that, and Dad would let Pat Hagan was my friend. He lived down the street from the race shop, and somehow we got to know each other, and Dad said we could watch Pete, but we had to stay out of his way. And then when he was done at the day, then we would tell Pete, you know, have them kids clean up whatever you want, you know. So that was our learning experience. We couldn't ask any questions, you know. You just out of sight, out of mind. You just sit over there, and so. But it was fun, you know. That was to me was the start of it. Dad had John Bovey and guys helping him, and you know they were all business in the race shop, and they were always building, creating, and they just didn't have the time for kids to be asking questions. So we all stayed on the side. We knew our spot, and we hung out, and you know, and then we got close to getting our license. You know, then things started really changing.
Before you go into that, when by the time you were born, because I know like one time Grandpa raced out of the barn that was on the land. Was he out of the working out of the race car in the barn, or that probably only lasted for a little while?
Yeah, that was really, really early on. I don't even know if that would have been early when I was born, because by the time I was old enough to know anything, you know, and we were riding around on mini bikes, they were into that. At that time, they actually shared a race shop with Dick Trickle. So there was a building right next to Quick Trip on West Grand, and they both shared a shop there. So
yep, okay,
that's where they started. So
okay, yeah. So yeah, back to around the time of when you were getting your license.
Yeah, so I mean, Dad told us that, you know, he didn't have a lot of money. Every dollar he had went into race cars, you know. So and he wanted us to learn how cars work. So we had to buy a wrecked car or something that was. We had to fix something. Our first car had to be something that didn't work. So I don't remember what Baird got a Nova. I don't remember what the deal was with his. Dad bought me a AMC Hornet that had got hit a guardrail. The whole right front was gone. I mean, there's no suspension. There's nothing. It's all bent. I'm like, what am I going to do with that? You know, but mine was a year off, you know, so that didn't matter. But Baird was going to get his license a year ahead of me, so the Nova was priority. So I don't remember why, but maybe he was putting bucket seats into it or something, but he had all the interior ripped out of it. Got the motor going, and the motor's running. We gotta take this thing around the shop, you know. So we sat on cement blocks and drive that thing around the race shop, spinning it sideways and on cement blocks, bouncing around. But yeah, that was the start of it. My Hornet we put that together. Well, with my fascination with engines, it came with a 360 V8. Well, AMC made a 400 or 401, and that's what Dad raced. They had a 401 block.
Mm-hmm.
I got to have 401. I can't have this 360 if there's a 401 available. I'm like, Dad, where can I get a 401? He's like, Dulkey's wrecking yard was just down from the race shop. Well, you have to tell Dulkey to keep an eye out for an AMC that's got a 401 in it. Tell him you want the motor, because they were buying stuff, and it was a big junkyard. And so we as kids were living there, because it was like, well, that's where we got to get parts to fix these things, So we got to know them pretty good. And lo and behold, they tell my dad that, we got this Javelin coming in. It's all destroyed, but there's got a 401 in it. Your kid said he wanted one. So I got the 401 and put that in there. And I put straight pipes on it. Dad's like, no, you're putting mufflers on this thing. And I put them out in front of the rear wheels, it was the trend back then in the early 80s. And he said, you got to put mufflers on there. I'm like, okay. So I found somebody to sell me some glass backs, and then Dad goes, well, you got to get this thing licensed. It's a salvage vehicle. You got to have a cop come and inspect it. And I'm like, well, that would have been good information before we started this project. So I got this 2.5-inch exhaust, class packs. I had a hood scoop. I put a hood scoop on it. My dad's like, they are not going to let that thing fly. So back out to Dulkey's I go. I'm like, hey, you got a hood? I said, I'll bring it back. I just need it when I get inspected. And he goes, yeah, there's one out there. It's probably banged up, but he goes, so I take that, I bring it back, completely different color, pop it on there. And the cop, I didn't even bolt the hinges on it. So cop comes, and state cop, has to be a state police back then. So he rolls in there and goes, well, start it up. And I start it up, and it's idling. Boom, boom, boom. He goes, well, rev it up. I'm like, what do you mean rev it up? He says, rev it up. Because he's looking at the straight pipes coming outside, and I rev it up, and it's just loud. And he goes, I get you're a kid. And he goes, I'm going to sign off on this eventually, but you're going to tell me right now you're going to put some different mufflers on there, correct? I'm like, yep, yes, sir. So he goes, well, open the hood. I want to see the engine. So I'm opening the hood, I'm holding on to it because it's nothing holding the back. And he goes, why isn't it bolted on? And he goes, I'm like, I'm scared to tell him the truth, And I'm like, I just haven't had time, You got here early. And he goes, it's a different color. And I'm like, all right, I got to cave. And I'm like, because I had to take the air cleaner off because, Dad had aluminum intakes, So I got this thing, aluminum intake, big Holly carburetor. Biggest one Dad had in the back, So gas didn't mean anything back then. And he goes, where's the hood that goes on here? And I'm like, oh, it's in the back shop. How tall is the hood scoop? It can't be over 3 inches. It's not over 3. And I think it was like 6 inches tall or something. He goes, that I'm not signing off on. So he goes, you promised me you put a 3-inch or smaller on here, and I'll sign off on it. So I did. I cut that one off, got a 3-inch, and had to get a shorter air cleaner. But, yeah, so that was the start of my Motorhead days. I mean, at that point, I was just I always laughed because I looked at pictures of my dad, when he was younger, and, their nickname was Greasers, back then. He had the rolled up sleeves.
Yeah,
and greased back hair. And, and I was officially becoming a member of the Motorhead gang, So that was fun. And the one thing that we, in the midst of building our street cars, they had and mischief at the race shop now. My uncle had an old go-kart frame. So Baird and I had the idea that we should put that go-kart together. We should get a motor for it. Yeah, let's do that. So the Haskies, Todd and Rusty, their dad had a Viking snowmobile dealership the next road from the race shop. Everybody in that area was, Kirby lived over there. And so we go over see what they got for an engine we can get. So his dad goes, well, I got a 340 cc snowmobile engine here. Oh, perfect. That's, it's not quite a 440, but a 340 will work. And we go back and say, Dad, they got a 340 snowmobile engine they'll let us have. You are not putting a 340 snowmobile engine on. You'll kill yourself. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, he goes, you are not putting it on there. And he said, I'm going out by Jimbo. I'll see what Jimbo's got. So he comes back the next day. He's got this single lung, little bitty 15-horse snowmobile engine. I'm like, what are we going to do with that? And he goes, you put that on there, and if you guys feel you need more horsepower than that, then you come talk to me. That was a 15-horse, motor.
Yeah.
It's like, so he showed us, helped us put the primary, secondary clutch on it with a chain, just like it was a snowmobile drive. We took the chain out of a chain case, got a solid axle, put this thing on. It would literally spin the tires. You could make a lap around the race shop and never, and the tires would spin the entire time. It had so much power. I was like, all right, he was right on the 340 motor, because we were all pouting. We were like little babies running around. Our dad won't let us have that 340 motor on our go-kart. But the thing, you couldn't steer it. It had so much horsepower. We put the engine behind the axle, and then we slid the seat back because we're kind of getting grown up, So we got this thing stretched out. So and it had little bitty tires on the front, and it wouldn't steer. So Dad goes, well, take some of that, the lead bars he had steel bars from the paper mill. They're like 3-inch. Cut a piece off, welded on the front of the bumper. Well, we put one on there. That was a little better, but it'd just plow. I'll get another chunk and put it on there. So after, I think, 2.5 pieces, we got where it would steer. It had enough counterweight on the front. So we literally would just spend hours, and we would time each other. The deal was who would go around the shop the fastest, and we'd spit gravel everywhere. And we got to know the Grand Rapids cops pretty good, because one day we're zooming around the race shop, and we're only 100 feet from the edge of the road, and we're spraying the road full of rocks. And he stops, put his lights on. He goes, all right, why don't you boys go get some brooms and sweep the road? I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, sweep the rocks off the road. So we had to sit there supervised by the policeman, and we swept the rocks off. And he goes, I'm not going to tell you to do this every day, so quit spitting gravel out here on this side of your shop. So we had to straighten up our course, so we couldn't curve all the way around the front of the race shop. So, but yeah, that was quite entertaining, and that thing, it almost killed your dad. I mean, we were timing each other, and we had the frame jig. That was 6-inch I-beams welded together. It was, I don't know what, well, you've seen it. It's like 2.5 feet off the ground. Well, at them days, Dad didn't have it in the race shop because they had 2 cars in there, and they were building engines and stuff. So when they weren't doing any framework, it went outside on the up by the lot. Well, Our racetrack for the go-kart went close to it. So the one day, and this old go-kart frame is old. I mean, it was my uncle's, and I don't know when he had it, probably when he was a little kid. And it had ancient tie rods on it, and Baird's going around the corner, and the tie rod breaks. And he's heading straight for that frame jig. Well, the post that supports is probably 4 feet hanging out the end. I mean, right at the last second, ducks his head, and bam! And I'm like, whoa! I'm like, that was close. And yeah, we didn't. We kind of put the go-kart to rest after that for a while, because it was.
That's a close call.
Yeah, that one was, and we were getting good with it, and we started learning. We had to go out by Jimbo. We're like, how do we do this? How do we adjust these primary, secondary clutches so they come on faster? And, because it was taking too long for them to spool up, for the primary to get bigger. And so we wanted to get fast. So we were getting faster and faster. And, it was a good time to shut that program down. So
on the snowmobile topic, when did Grandpa have the Rupp shop, and how long did he really have that for?
Yeah, and I was trying to place that when we had those mini bikes. He only had it for a short period, and I don't know. That was in the early 70s.
Okay,
I'd have to verify that, because I can't place it. It was out on the end of A Street, and I know I wasn't driving when they folded it up, but so it was in the 70s sometime.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, did the go-karting, did that ignite any interest in actually like wanting to race yourself, or was that there kind of already?
I never wanted to race. Never had the desire. It never was a thought in my head. I wanted to help my dad. I wanted to build engines. That's all I wanted to do. I could care. At that time, I could have cared less about getting behind the wheel. It was weird. I mean, I guess as we tell this story, you'll find a lot of transitions along the way that just shaped and molded my path in life. That just happened. So, but yeah, I never had a desire. That desire came. Well, I started helping Roger Wilhorn, and we had. At that time, I liked having fun. I mean, I was getting out, and everywhere we went, my dad was, known, in the mid 70s, he'd won, 67 features. He's being talked about. In my mind, it's like, how do you hold the candle to that? How do you follow that up? I mean, to me, it was like, I had a bigger chance of being a failure than not, with a track record like that to follow. So I just really never had the motivation at that point. And I wanted to help people, and I think Roger was Baird's friend. And this is a pretty good story. You probably get mad for me telling it, but how I met Roger was, I knew he was Baird's friend, and he was building I think it was hobby stock. Maybe they called them Roadrunners then. I can't remember what we had. But he was building one, and Kenny Matthews stopped by his shop, and it was I don't know if it was a big guy, big Ford. Roger was a Ford guy, and he's like trying to get the brakes done, bleed the brakes. Couldn't get the brakes bled. Those old brakes back then, it was hard to get them all the air out, or even to get them started where they'd prime and you could bump them.
Okay.
And they told him they were on their way to the racetrack, and he's like, "Oh, you don't need brakes." They're joking, So they leave, and Roger's like, well, I'll qualify. I don't need brakes for the racetrack. I'll qualify, and then I get somebody to help me bleed the brakes. I'm learning this story after the fact, I knew Roger from Baird, so then I see him pull in, and he's going to go out on the racetrack. Well, Albert Getzloff used to always watch the racetrack, stand by qualifying by pit road, or the wall up there at the end of pit road. I say, you always got to go stand by Albert and see what kind of wisdom he's got for you.
Yeah.
So I'm standing there to watch Roger. He goes barreling down the back straightaway, takes the green. I mean, he goes to drop it down into one. He'd never been on a racetrack before. Well, he ain't got a lick of brakes, and he's thinking he's got to drive through this wide open. He launches right off turn one. This is his first lap on a racetrack. Boom, through the sand, up by the wall. He's sitting there, dust clears out, and of course, Albert, he never run from any of those wrecks, and I'm like getting out of the way, and dust clears. Albert goes, "What's the matter? You got no reverse in that thing?" I'm just dying laughing. So
just not even phased.
No. So, I mean, that's where I got to get to know Roger and just loved helping him. And somehow along the way of me helping him, and he'd probably be mad if he hears this one too, but somehow we got, I know, he went and got a haircut. And somewhere along the way, he decided he should have a afro or perm, and I nicknamed him Buckwheat from the Rascals, he didn't like that at all. And so then I became Spanky. So it was Spanky and Buckwheat. So that was our joke. And Sonia Drosty, well, anybody that had a kid, in that area, we all knew each other. And so she had made shirts up that was Buckwheat and Spanky race team. So Roger was getting where he was running, and I was trying to help him do whenever I could. And the one time we were bantering back and forth on this nickname stuff, and Dad always had white shoe polish, the ones with the foam pad on the end,
Yep.
And because you always made numbers with that because there was no vinyl back then. And if you got dinged up, you always had to have a number. So you always had to have white shoe polish. And so I'm like, I took that white shoe polish and I put Buckwheat on top of his door, He goes out and wins the heat race. They take a picture of it, and they put it on the front page of Speedway Motorsport, the Speedway Sports. I I had a copy of it for the longest time. It was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his first race, he got labeled with buckwheat on top of the door. But anyway, that was just the fun we had back then. So we had fun, at that time. Actually, we had tragedy at that time. Roger and Baird and my friend was Buck Hansen, and that guy was larger than life. If you ever, I mean, he ended up passing away, but he walked into the race shop. It was just one of those guys that just lit a room up. Yeah, the Three Stooges were big back then, so he could imitate Mole or Curly to a T, and he would come in, spin around on one foot, and whoop, 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 and just, I mean, we had fun. I mean, we just loved life back then. The racing didn't cost anything, and it was just fun to do. And then Buck ended up, he was working on a car, and it fell on him, and but yeah, that was
okay.
He got taken way too soon, but. I always wondered, you get a guy like that that's so full of life, and if you get to carry on with him, how your life would change. And
right.
But, yeah, it's just, it was too young to learn that lesson in life. But
so he passed away at a very young age.
Yeah,
when you guys,
okay. I was actually at the race shop. It was in the winter. Buck had a beautiful yellow Mach 1 Mustang, one of them long ones. And it was just beautiful. Well, he didn't drive in the winter, so he had a little Pinto, I think it was a Pinto, yeah, because it was Ford, so he had to have a Ford product. Well, he drove it in the winter, and it was just a rust bucket, and the clutch didn't work, so I was going to meet him at the race shop, and we were going to fix his clutch. So I'm at the race shop, and I'm waiting for him. I had to go to school. I was going to school at that time, and got to the race shop, and no Buck, and I'm like, where is this goofball, and waiting, and then my mom and dad pull in the driveway, and what are they doing here, and well, Buck's dad knew my dad, and then he couldn't wait for me, so it was snow and ice, and he jacked that thing up and I borrowed him 2 jack stands earlier in the year. Well, they were the ones that we weld flat plates on, so he's out on his driveway with these jack stands with the flat plates, and I'm guessing it's snowy and icy, and the thing slid off, tipped over, whatever, but he got trapped under it, and just a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was we were quite the gang back then. So yeah, he was Buck was. I think Baird was with me. We're going to go to Milwaukee and watch my dad race. So we're going to ride. Buck wanted to take his Mustang, so we're going to go. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Baird was with us, and Buck just flew with that thing. So we're going down the interstate, and he's got this thing just lit up, and he's stretching its legs. We're 100 and something, going down the interstate, middle of the day, and all of a sudden, and back then, people would tap their brakes, if there was a cop in the median, so it was pretty common, courtesy back then, so guy up in front of us, we're going over a hill, taps the brakes, and Buck's like, oh, so he backs her down. We're drinking beer on the way to the racetrack, we're pretty young, but we
allegedly
somehow had this stuff in the car, so he crests the hill, and he's like, the instant he crests it, the cop's right there, he takes, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, but it was just the way he was, and he'd laugh about it, and the way we'd went, but yeah, so it was just the things that happened back then that we did, and we were living life large back then, it was kind of cool, but
yeah, but yeah, no, terrible thing to obviously have to go through at that sort of an age. Now, you weren't worried about going racing yourself, but at what point did you start thinking, hey, I'm going to do this? And when you eventually got to that point, were you even really serious about it? Or was it just kind of like, man, I'm just going to go do this because Roger's doing it?
So no, it would have been, so it was the winter of 1980. So Baird tells my dad he wants to go, he wants to build a hobby stock. I'm like, what? And I'm like, Dad's like, all right, go get you a car and we'll put a roll cage in it. And I'm like, well, brotherly competition, I'm like, well, what am I going to do if he's got a hobby stock, So I thought about it for a few days, and I'm like, Dad, I want one too. So you don't even have a driver's license. I'm like, well, I want one. He's like, well, you'll have your driver's license, that, because that was before winter. Because I turned 16 in November, and he goes, well, if you want to build one, we'll get one too. So, yeah, so we had we started building. So that's how that did. It was like I didn't really want to, but if your brother's going to have one, I got to have one. And there again, I went to got to have the biggest motor and back to Dulkey's to get a 401. Well, you couldn't at that time. Those rules you couldn't run an engine that didn't come in there. And I had a AMC Hornet Fastback, and it only came with a 304. But you could get a special edition. They had a 360 that because back then AMC had the 304 had it cast in the side of the block. They had a 343, a 360, and then a 390 and a 401. I'm like, well, that's cool. I get the 401. I just grind the numbers off, and that's a 360 special. So that's what I did, and dumbest thing ever, Golden Sands, like horsepower was the last thing you needed there. You needed how to figure out how to get through the corner, And that's what my dad's trying to tell me. You need to worry about getting this thing together and going through a corner. Don't worry about this horsepower. I mean, no, I got to have 401. Well, those AMCs were atrocious for oiling issues. They just, the AMC in general was a terrible, and I just kept burning. I'd burn the motor up and just kept spinning bearings. So you go bigger oil pan, hold more oil. We virtually had the thing completely full of oil. It just like flood the valve covers and just virtually force it back down into the oil pan. I think it had like 13-quart oil pan on it and just massive. And then we got to where I still would burn up the motor. Then we welded a pipe on the side of the valve cover, ran a hose, put another pipe in the side of the oil pan that had this big box built on it, try to get some of the oil back. And so I fixed it. Well, then things were going good, so I'm starting to run and getting where I'm somewhat competitive, And then the right front wheels would start snapping off. So we had stock wheels, them would snap off. And then the first time that happened, well, and think about what would happen with this giant oil pan that I got on there, So when the wheel's gone, the first skid pad I got is the oil pan. So by the time I got it stopped up on the top of turn 3 and 4, I'd roar through the oil pan and can't get it off the track. Wheel's gone. Wrecker's not out at Sands for practice, They came from somewhere, Plover Point, and so there's my hobby stock. Draining 13 quarts of oil down the straightaway or down the corner, right in the center of the corner. Well, you can imagine every late model driver that showed up later, they were furious. It's like, well, the track's ruined, And I mean, 'cause it just sat there and soaked in, no oil dry, no nothing until the track crew got there. Because at that time, if you wanted to go practice, you just went out to the track. You just went out there and got on the track. They didn't care, So our shop was only 4 miles from the track, so if you got done early and off you went. I didn't have a hauler. I had a tow bar that pulled so I had a AMC Hornet pulling an AMC Hornet. That's in tow bar.
So you pulled it with a car, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how we got to the racetrack. And and you hoped you didn't hit the tabs that you had welded on the front bumper. You didn't want to run into anybody because then you couldn't put the tow bar back on to get it back home. So we wrecked it once, and then I had Pat Hagen drive my car, and he didn't have a license, and then I followed him in the race car, drove it all the way back to the shop. We acted like we were in a tow bar situation.
Oh, thankfully, you only had to go 4 miles.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah,
things were a lot more looser back then, anyway. If you got pulled over.
Yeah, did you have any success in the Roadrunner stuff, or?
I got pretty good. I mean, I don't even know if I ever won anything. I was pretty competitive. I think I ran top 5. I got to where I felt where I was competitive. Somewhere along right after that is when they closed Sands down. So
okay,
we knew they were having troubles. I think that the next year they kicked the late models out. I think they only had like one late model show. It was like the Wild Wild West. I mean, there was fights, they didn't, that before then, the Wood County cops would come out there and, stand in the grandstands and stuff. But I mean, that was a rough time back then. So they had spectator drags and, hobby stocks and maybe something else. And it was, people drinking. There was fights all the time. I mean, it was crazy stuff. The spectator drags, people would run in each other and they'd be fighting out on the racetrack. And I'm like, what are we doing here? It was crazy stuff, I was kind of losing interest in it at that point, but they closed the track down. And I think, I know Baird went out and traveled a lot. He went to a lot of other, he went to some other tracks. I think he went up to Wausau and a few. I think he actually went to Michigan once. I don't know. I'd have to ask him, but he started traveling. I did. I just started helping Dad. Okay. I'm just going to go back helping Dad. And if they had a couple specials, I think they ran maybe Wausau once or something with it. I don't know, but I was easing out of it and just wanted to help Dad. I wasn't back helping him, and that's kind of where it was a Friday, and he was going to go to Madison. He had that Ford flatbed that had they loaded the car on the back and they had a sleeper. So he only could take 3 people in the front and then one person could ride in a sleeper. He usually had a full crew. And I can't remember who couldn't make it. Somebody couldn't make it. And Dad asked me, you want to go to Madison? I'm like, I'd heard all about Madison, I'm like, yeah, I'll go with you. So, and I'd heard how fast Madison was, well, I'm in the sleeper, so, and you go into the pits and you can't see the track. So I'm just like, you can hear cars going around, but I couldn't see the track. And Ed Guiley was helping Dad, and he was from down there. He'd meet Dad at the track. And this is my first time in Madison. So we're at the track. I get the car unloaded, and I didn't really have any tasks other than kind of stay out of the way, and somebody needed a tool, you run and get it,
Mm-hmm.
So Dad's getting ready to go out to practice, and Dad says, you stay with Ed. Don't get lost. Stay with Ed. And I'm like, all right, well, Ed's big guy, and he's like, all right, I'll stay with Ed, So they always, you stood by the wall and turn 1 and 2 all along there. So Ed's like, there's a lot of people down in the center. He's like, let's go over by 1 and watch your dad practice. So we walk up there, and I get to the top, and I look, and I remember it vividly. There's this green car, had a 93 on the side, and by this time they're starting to get some aerodynamics on them, so they had this here's this Camaro, this wide front end on it, and it's barreling down that front straightaway, and we're standing, it's lined right up at us, and I'm like, he's hauling the mail, and I'm like, my eyes are they had to be big as saucers. And I'm looking up at Ed, and I'm like looking at that car, and I'm like, whoa. And Ed's looking at me like, Tom should have told me there's something wrong with his kid. And I just can't believe it, and because I think the biggest track at that time, maybe it was Wausau, Sands, Dells maybe, and hadn't gone to any big half mile.
Now, are you like around like high school age at the time? Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, I would have been, I would have been 16, 15, because I didn't have my license, because I had to ride back with Dad. So
okay, so you even up around that time, obviously, Grandpa had ventured around racing a lot of other places, but you just only went kind of close to home?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, and I could not believe, because they stayed in that throttle so deep, and then they peeled off that corner or off the wall and drove it down in there, and then the speed they carried through there. That at that point right then and there, I wanted to race at Madison. I didn't care about anywhere else. I wanted to race Madison. I'm like,
yeah,
that was the coolest looking thing I'd ever seen in my life. And then you're looking down, and those guys would just hop right back in the throttle and drive off full throttle. And we were driving back, and I rode with Dad and his little gremlin back to the house, and I was like, Dad, I want to race a late model at Madison. He goes, if you're going to race a late model, that's the last place you're going to go. He goes, you're going to start somewhere, Wausau, and it, like I said, Sands, I think it was still closed. And so I'm like, all right, if that's what I got to do to get there, that's what I want, you know. So at that time, I think Baird was getting out of, going to not race the hobby stock. And Dad had an old Frings car, and he says, well, you should put that together. And I think the front end, there's something wrong with the front end. And Dad was getting into the Bac Kar stuff at this point. So we decided to put that Frings car together and try and run the ARTGO series and run a couple local shows. I mean, I didn't have any money. It was just all going to be all used tires and whatever. But yeah, that was the first time that I ever truly wanted to drive something.
Okay.
Before that was just all fun and games, you know. I mean, we'd go to the track at the hobby stock, and it was just, you know, it was just fun. But after that, that's when I really got the desire and the itch to understand, learn, and get into behind the wheel of a late model. So,
and I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but was it really I would say, lack of desire to actually want to race yourself? Was it really just because of, hey, I just want to go and have fun, and obviously Grandpa was winning everything, so you get to, you know, and you can be a part of that, and it's just, you know, winning and doing well.
That was it. I mean, I was young. I just wanted to. I had my hot rod, you know, street car at this point, you know, and we had quite a, you know, Will Horn was he was with he had the pickup truck with the big wheels, and you know, so there was quite a lot of us, you know. We hung out at the McDonald's on A Street, had a parking lot right next door, and as we all hung out there. I mean, it was back then, you know, hot rods were big time, you know. Todd Austin had a Nova. He was a good friend of mine, big slicks on it, and we're street racing, you know. I mean, it was crazy times back then, but so here I got this shop that we can build engines in, and everybody else is, you know, doing theirs in their garage. And so, yeah, that was kind of my thing, you know, then. But after that Madison race, I wanted to get into the racing and started taking more interest in it. And little did I know where that was going to go. So,
and then the Frings car, did Grandpa have much success with the Frings car?
I don't. So I know he got that because Larry Deachens had one, and he was winning everything.
Yep.
And I know Dad was fairly fast in it, but I don't know his record with it, because that was, I don't know. I would have to look.
I know. I guess the one that sticks out to my mind that he struggled with was the Dillon car. I think for a little while.
Well, and then he had a Bemco, and Bemco was
maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Holy cow, was that thing? I mean, it was artwork as far as, you know, creating this, you know, well designed, and I mean they TIG welded everything, but what an absolute disaster to try and work on. I mean, the steering rack bolted to the front of the engine, and I think
it was the Bemco I had in my head. Yeah,
that thing was a miserable thing to work on. By this time, I'm helping with that thing, and they didn't have nylon lock nuts and everything. It all had steel lock nuts, fine thread, you know. So it just took you forever to take something apart and everything. I mean, I get why they did it. They were trying, you know, they were evolving to get everything, you know, lighter, closer, in one mass, you know, so everything was tight, you know. And you had to put the headers in the car. You had people had to sit and hold them while you wedged that motor in there and then bolt them on, and it was a fight to get all those bolts started. You couldn't get your hands in there with the bars they had. And, I did not like that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean and I don't know like I said, Larry was winning everything with that Frings car, so I don't remember what Dad's track record was with that.
Okay. And then, so how did putting the Frings car together? Was everything all there?
No, they had pretty much robbed everything off of it. And by this time, Dad was easing into the Bac Kar stuff, you know, so now I'm hanging out at Box, you know, and that's a treat in itself, you know, and it was incredible times, you know. I look back at it now, you know, of what they were doing back then and how they were, evolving things, and but that was early on in their design stuff. I mean, Dad and Jimbo were friends forever, you know. They were just, Jimbo was starting to build chassis and looking to sell them, you know, and have other people drive them or use them. So
right.
But yeah, that was what happened there. And then I think Jimbo helped me with a lot of pieces. It was whoever Dad had for friends. I don't remember where the rear end came from, and yeah, we just plugged everything down. I used a bunch of his old shocks and stuff, and
just random motor parts too, just to get something together. Or
and that thing, we were actually running an old AMC engine in it.
Okay,
and which was phasing out at that time, but Dad had some left over, so that's what I started with, an AMC engine, and it didn't have much in the relation to when the Chevy small block started coming around and coming to life. You know, that thing was it was on its way out. You know, they were heavy. You know, they had steel heads, and then, you know, Chevy was coming around with the aluminum heads, and obviously we're racing, that meant everything. So, but it was someplace to start, you know, and get my feet wet, and started going to tracks. And
where did you first take it? Was it Wausau? I would think that would have been probably the next closest, probably that, or Dells.
It was Wausau was the first place that I went. Sands, I think I know we practiced at Sands with it, but they weren't open weekly until 84. I can't remember when they opened back up. When the Pruschers took it back over and brought it back to life, you know. So, yeah, that would have been later on, because that's when I actually had a good car when they opened it back up. So yeah, it was, I think Wausau and Dells would have been the two places I went and tried to stay out of the way. So.
Yeah, I always like to ask people if they remember do you remember your first late model race? I mean, I know.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. No. Probably drank too many beer along the way after that, but yeah, I do not. It's crazy though. I should, but I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I like I said, I like asking that because I remember my first one vividly, and all the learning lessons that came along with it. But I guess probably in, you know, your first year running it, did you get a chance to race against your dad at that point? No. Okay.
No, I was strictly in the semi. There was a lot of good guys racing back then. A lot. I was strictly a semi car.
Okay.
When I got to my own Bac car, that's when I got to race against Dad.
Okay.
That was interesting. I'll tell you a story. Roger Scanlon was another guy that helped me. Another guy larger than life back then, and he was good help to me, you know. And we were always laughing all the time, and so I'm getting where I'm competitive, and we're at the Dells, and they had a twin 50-lap race or something, you know, and I could race with my dad, you know, at this point, you know. I mean, I wasn't faster, but I could race with him, you know. So we ran the first 50, and I don't know where I ended up, you know. I'm sure everybody passed me at some point. So after the race, and they have a couple other races, and then they run the second one. So the car's up on stands, and I'm telling Roger, I'm like, we crawled underneath it. I'm like, we gotta make a panel bar adjustment or something here. And so we're laying under there looking at it. Also, my dad comes bebopping over. He sticks his head in the wheel well, and he's like, you better keep that thing on the bottom in the second one. I ain't putting up with that on the second race. And I'm like, all right, I'll keep an eye on it. And Roger's just staring at me under the car like this, and he's like, I'm like, what? And he goes, well, you better figure out what you're doing. I'm like, well, thanks. And he goes, you know, we got to go back to that same shop. We're on the same shop. And I'm like, yes, I know that, Roger. So, yeah, that was my first education with keeping it on the bottom of the racetrack from my dad. So, yeah, it was quite entertaining. So
then when you ran that Frings car, was that always strictly a semi-feature car, and then you ended up?
I actually went and ran the ARTGO Challenge Series. Dad wanted and said that, you know, if you want to get out and try something, you know, get some different tracks, try the ARTGO Challenge Series. And I'm like, okay, you know. So and they had quite a few cars doing that series, but it was enough where I And I was just getting where I was good enough where I could make the features and stuff. So I'm like, all right, we'll do it. And, and Roger Wilhorn was helping me, Roger Scanlon, and, so I had an old Ford pickup truck and an open trailer, and we ventured all across, at that time ARTGO was going. I think we went over to Indiana. I think that was Bearfield, and we went to a bunch of tracks, and I ended up winning the Rookie of the Year. I don't know where I was in points. It was way down,
Okay.
But they ended up having a decent year, enough to do that. So, I felt good about it. It was kind of neat to win that, and something to build on. But and then we ended up wrecking that Frings car the next year. So that was, that would have been right before Oktoberfest. We ended up wrecking that car. I don't even remember what the deal was, but that's how I ended up in Dad's car at Oktoberfest. So that car got wrecked. That was that, and after I'd won that was in, that was 83, was the ARTGO champion, or the Rookie of the Year. Yeah, and 84 would have been Oktoberfest. So that was when I ended up in Dad's car. He'd built a new Bac Kar, and he'd won the car that he was going to give me was the one he'd won the Oktoberfest the year before.
Okay.
And when I wrecked, the motor broke. That's what it was. That's what it was. The motor broke. It was big time. So we were running 400 Chevy 400s, and they were notorious for, breaking. The cranks would break every so often. Of course, I had any money, so I ran mine till its guts fell out, and Carl would yell at me. But that thing grenaded, I think about it. So the back of the crank actually broke off, broke the back of the block off, broke the bell housing, broke the transmission, dumped oil everywhere. So I go flying in. I think that was at Grundy. Backed it in the fence. Well, of course, everybody behind me is coming in after me. I laid down.
Yeah.
It's oil and water. Everything's out on the track and destroyed a bunch of stuff, and which sucked, But yeah, that's how I ended up from getting to that point. So, but yeah, and then, at this point, I'm heavily hanging out at Box. I'm heavy hanging out at Wagner's, help Dad's got Wagner engines, and that's another treat and a half, hanging around down at Wagner's back in the early days. That was interesting as all get go. But yeah, that Oktoberfest race, Dad's like, you can run my car, I'll run the new one. I'm like, you got a car that won the last one, you're going to win, pretty much you'll win this one with it again, it was so fast. But I think he was just being a supportive dad and was going to run the new one. And he goes, yeah, well, ask Carl if he can get you an engine and put it in the car and go see if you can run it. So I went down to Carl, and I'm like, Dad's going to let me run his car at the fest. Why would he do that? I don't know. You'll have to ask him. And he told me to come ask you if you had an engine I could use for that race, or buy or something, And Carl's like, well, let me talk to Dan. We'll see what kind of parts we got laying around. And so he calls Dad and asks him why he's letting me run his car. First you got to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And then he's like, send your kid down here, and we got some parts laying around. We'll put it together. So I'm like, all right, I'll go down there. And Carl had this brainstorm. He's like, this is going to be a junk motor. He said, it's going to run good, but it's a junk motor. I want to see if anybody will buy them. I'm like, well, what is it? He goes, we're going to take a 400 block. We're going to put a stock Chevy 327 crank in it. It's going to be a D-stroked engine. We're going to get to a 357 or 358. And we're going to put stock Chevy pink rods in it. We're really light. And then he goes, you're going to LaCrosse, it won't blow up. And he put the lightest pistons he could get in this thing. $2,500 is what we had in this engine. I had all my peripheral stuff, the dry sump and all that, but that was just for the short block and all the stuff. And I'm like, $2,500? Yep, brand new. And I'm like, okay.
And at that time, like what was a really good motor costing somebody?
I think at that time the 9-to-1s were up in the 14,000 range.
Okay, yeah, I suppose that would have been 9-to-1 time frame too. Yeah,
so
okay.
that's when they were coming around, and so we ran that motor, and we won that race. Nobody believed that that's the motor that was in there. Nobody. He never sold one of them. Never sold one engine. That was crazy. Nobody would believe him that was in there.
Yeah. So on that race then, the 1984 Oktoberfest, I know there was. Did you end up originally? Was it you weren't going to run the big show there because was that the same race that Jim Bach borrowed you tires, or how did that all go?
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't have any money, so I actually had a set of scuffs that Dad had, and that's what I qualified on. At that time, the Oktoberfest race was 250-lap races. The odd qualifiers ran 150. The even qualifiers, or per your time, ran another 50-lap. And the top so many of those is what set the stage for the 100-lapper.
Okay.
So you had to run good in the 50-lapper, and then how you finished there is how you started the 100-lapper. So, well, obviously I'm in Dad's car, things got to set up. It won the race the prior year, so I'm booking around there. I do pretty good in the first one. But I'm going to run my 50-lap tires in the 100-lapper. I'm not buying no more tires. Everybody else that's competing to win, they bought, they're buying 4 more tires for the 100-lapper.
Okay.
No, this is what I got. Well, and Jimbo comes over to me, he goes, and something happened to Jimbo. I don't know if his motor broke, something happened, and he didn't finish the 50-lapper, and he goes, put my tires on. He goes, they're perfectly matched, and you'll win this race. I'm like, Jimbo, I can't pay you for the tires. He said, typical Jimbo, he's like, did I ask you to buy the tires? I asked you to put the tires on. He goes, are you going to come get the tires, or do I got to bring them over here? So Jimbo I loved him. He meant everything to me, and the whole family. I mean, what they did for my career moving past this point is amazing. But so anyway, I learned 2 years ago, Les Bach told me that they actually Jimbo offered those tires to my dad first. And my dad told him, no, you go give them to Bryan.
Okay.
I had no idea. Dad had never told me that Jimbo asked him first, So I put those tires on, and off we went. And to back this story up, I'd crashed the car, and it was destroyed, motor's gone. So, and I felt good. I won the ARTGO Rookie of the Year, and that was going to be my last race. I was going to call it, just go back helping Dad. I'm like, I couldn't really afford. I didn't, everything was in racing was starting to, get more and more expensive, and I'm starting to understand the tire scenario, and I'm like, I don't have any money to do this, I'm not going to do this. And I felt that knowing that having that equipment, I could run with him. I felt good, so that was going to be my last race. And I was like, so Jimbo, little did he know what that created too, so he rolls those tires over, and I don't know where we started, 3rd or 4th or something, but I got up there in the lead, and Ted Musgrave was running second, and Dad actually was running 3rd. And I think the last 40 laps of that race, Ted and I ran side by side. I mean, side by side, and I had to laugh because at that time everything was sponsored by Old Style back then, and
Okay.
I don't know if he was somebody high up in Old Style, and he comes down after the race, and he goes, that is the best race I've ever seen in my life. And he's like, gives me his name and his card. He's like, I want you to come over to the brewery. I'm going to give you a tour of the brewery. He said, that was the best race he said, I did not know that 2 guys could race that long for this big of a race and never touch. I'm laughing to myself. I'm like, you have no idea. I'm like, I know Ted Musgrave wanted to just club me and get me out of the way, but he'd have never made it to the next corner. Dad's right on his bumper, I'm laughing to this guy. The only reason you got to see the best race you ever saw is because my dad was in 3rd, and Ted knew he would never make it to the next corner if he run me out of the group. So,
was there something that happened between you and Ted like earlier on? prior to that race?
Yeah, he hated my guts.
Okay.
Yeah, he hated my guts. We were at LaCrosse and earlier that year, and I always cycled my tires, on a short on like a Wausau, Wausau. We put new tires on there, and because you could halfway keep up with her. I started at the front. I got out in the front, and I liked Ted. We were pretty good friends, and I'm out in front. I'm probably got 6 car lengths on second place, and Ted was really fast back then.
Mm-hmm.
He hopped got through the pack first, because back then, if you qualified in a fast time, you were in the trunk, and it was a hard battle to get to the front. And this is a weekly show, So Ted's catching me, and I'm trying to time this. All I wanted to do was have Ted pass me in one corner and then drop in behind him, so I would hopefully finish second. Because I'm not that fast, I want to get as much distance before like my dad and anybody else breaks out of the pack.
Yeah.
I dropped down so far out of the groove. I dropped 2 wheels into the apron going into turn 3 at LaCrosse, right as Ted catches going to pass me. So I hook it, it turns, and I hit him, and I send him into the wall. I mean, I was devastated. I couldn't believe I did it. I'm trying to get so far out of his way, I ended up crashing him. It's the thing that I regretted the most in my career. He hated me forever after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in the back of his mind, the only thing he wanted to do is just club me out of the way and go win this race, And I actually ended up pulling ahead of him and winning it. We didn't finish side by side, but yeah, I had to laugh when that guy told me that. I'm like, yeah. The only reason you saw that because old Tom Reffner is behind there, and he wasn't going to let that slide. So, but.
Had you up to that point? Had you won a super late model race at Wausau or anywhere?
No, I don't think
so. That was your first super late model race was winning the Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
Okay, I never knew that.
I think that was pretty much it. So yeah. Because if I did, I don't remember it, and it would have been starting up front, and nobody else got through the pack or something. We weren't that fast back then. So
okay.
But after that, I went up and got paid, and I think it was $3,500 cash. And I don't remember that was for the race and whatever they paid for the 50 lapper. I just wadded cash in my pocket, and my dad's like, well, you're going to take us all out to eat. That's what I can tell you what you're going to do with that money, So we went to the restaurant. I had to buy everybody some supper, and Jimbo's crew, his, dad's guys and me. But it was good. And then, the Bacs were just starting to come of age with, some really good chassis stuff. And for whatever reason, I decided to go out there and plead Jimbo if I could get a car. And so then I got my first Bac car and spent my days working down with Carl to get a good engine. And so then it was game on. Did
anything ever come about with Old Style or anything? Did you ever go and tour them?
I did. I went and toured it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went and toured it. And the one thing I remember was they had a banquet hall, and it had all these fancy glasses and all these tables, set up. And I just remember it had all these gold trimmed glass. And I'm like, oh, them are nice. And he takes one, and he goes, oh, take it with you. I don't know whatever happened to it, but it was pretty cool. But yeah, I got to tour it, and so that was cool. I never got any sponsorship.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that because they were actually sponsoring CBRA. They were anteing up to sponsor CBRA after that. So
okay.
So they weren't really looking to get a single car, but yeah, that was and everybody back then. Everybody drank. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people drank Old Style.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, I found several of these. These are kind of cool.
Yeah, that was good times.
I think there was another, and it was on the back of your old hobby stock when it was still out at the farm. I'm pretty sure it was Old Style, and it said Old Style stock car racing is a northern sport. I wish I could find one of those because those are cool. But yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty neat when they sponsored CBRA because that was helping it take off. It was giving CBRA some traction back then because having a sponsor was big at that point. So to promote the series. So
yeah. So was it really just the winnings that ended up propelling you to be able to go on to the next year, or was it kind of that, and then you were just kind of fired up.
Yeah, you're just fired up. I mean, you get that taste of victory, and you just, the addiction starts. It's plain and simple. You just got to have more, and you do whatever you got to do to get more. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, that was a good start to it. And
did you end up having to build your own car out at Box at that point?
So that was the deal Jimbo made with me. He was selling I gotta get this right, because I think so. Dad was going to get another new one. I think Steve Holzhausen, Jimbo. I think there was 4 of them. And Jimbo told me if I helped him, cut all the metal, help him build them, and I paid for the metal for mine, that they would build me the frame. It's like, oh, can't beat that, 2 things: you get to learn everything by being out by those guys, and 2, you get a chassis that's going to be what all the other top dogs are running. So
yeah,
and the priceless portion of that was just being able to be around that. I mean, when they were designing that, I don't even know what they were calling that first version of the Bac Kar. I mean, that was a 4-link, and that was the one that I was racing when I won Oktoberfest. And then the next version was going to go down to a 3-link, and because they wanted to get the seat back farther, I think. I don't know, but I just remember those guys, my dad and Jimbo, Les, and Bach, Gary Bach, and my dad had gotten a roll of paper out of the paper mills, like a 5-foot roll of paper, and they rolled that out on the floor, and they got straight edges, and they're laying the roll centers out on paper, and drawing it in real dimensions, and then they're laying out spindles, and they're mocking up stuff with simulating kingpin inclinations and or the caster, and I'm just like, all this stuff is just, blowing my mind. I'm like,
yeah.
What are you guys doing? And I couldn't suck it up enough. I couldn't get it fast enough, and I just loved being part of that. And it was crazy to watch those guys do that. I mean, there was no books, there was no internet, there was nothing. These guys are drawing it, and then they're making like holding bars, and like one guy'd push and one guy'd hold, because they're trying to feel what the difference would be if they move pivot points, and it was crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So it was neat, plotting their own camber curves, because they wanted to make sure all the A-frames are the right length, and it was crazy stuff.
Yeah, just on the floor of a shop.
Yeah, I mean, Jimbo I love that guy, and he always amazed me, because he guy drink all night, and we always, Roger Scanlon always, we always had the joke, if we'd look at a race car and we're trying to figure out what to do, and Roger would go, we got to do the Jimmy box, get to stand like this, we'd look at our notes, it's got to come to us if we do the Jimmy Bach, you got to have a cigarette and a beer can, That was our joke, if we stare at it doing this long enough, it's got to come to us, and I just remember one night I'm out there, and I'm working, and Jimbo's drinking, and then they were laying out the caster stuff, and they're talking about caster split. I didn't know what caster split even was, what are you guys talking about, and, so it's a difference caster right to left, and we all had manual steering then. Jimbo goes, we got to figure something out. I drink some more beer, and the next morning I go out there, and Jimbo, somewhere in the middle of the night, came out and he wrote this 3-page letter. I mean, it's solid words in him. He goes, you guys got to read this. And he gives it to my dad, and my dad's reading. He goes, yeah, we got to do that. And he goes, Les reads it, and Gary, and I'm the last one. I read it, and I'm like, he's talking about got to make power steering. If we had power steering, we could put more caster in these things, and it would de-wedge the car, we got to lay this out, how far we're turning the wheel and how much caster, how much that would de-wedge and what. So they manually laid that out. If they could find a way to get power steering, that they could get this car de-wedged in the middle of the corner. And so my dad had a friend, Gary McAllister. He had a machine shop, and so they decided to take a Chevy steering box apart and see how the power steering box worked. So they took it all apart, seen the servo valve, and because they're like, that's too soft, we got to have something we can feel. So they figured out how that whole thing worked, and well, we just got to make this torsion rod in there bigger, and then that would give us more feel. After they understood how it worked, so they found back then trunks had a spring rod. It had a rod that ran across, came out at a lever, and that's what opened your trunk. Well, that was a 1/2-inch diameter. It's spring steel. Oh, perfect. Cut that up. They took it over to Gary's. They ground this new torsion bar, made a fixture because you got to have that servo just lined up. Otherwise, it just turn right or left, And the next thing you know, then they got power steering, and now they're making different spindles and mounts
and at that point, that you guys knew of, did anyone else have power steering?
No, it wasn't even. It was unheard of. Yeah, absolutely. They were the first ones to have it. Absolutely.
Right out of Vesper, Wisconsin.
Yeah. And then Randy Sweet, he gets wind of some of this stuff because those guys are all racing against each other, and well, then he took it to the new level to make a rack and pinion steering, but he still had used that same servo, and then he would offer it in different feels, so that was a different size torsion bar in there. So yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I did not know that whatsoever.
Yeah. They had, they had the box, and then they still wanted to have a rack and pinion style, steering. So they had what they called a slide bar. So that steering box had a tie rod that connected to the edge of this flat bar, and then that slid back and forth in 2 mounts, and then that had your tie rods on it. So then it was always, because otherwise a steering box has that swing arm, so it's not very, the toe in or your Ackerman and all that, you can't adjust it. So that's the way they could adjust it. And yeah, it's crazy. That's what they came up with. Insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Insane is right.
But yeah, so that's the stuff I grew up around. It was just crazy. And that snowball just started rolling, just kept rolling. So we went, that would have been, trying to think when we got, so the 89, that was when I got the next version of the Bac Kar. And then 1990 was when Les and Barry built what they called the ultra low centered weight chassis, which is kind of the version of what's floating around out there now. And that thing was a dream to drive. That thing was fast everywhere we went with it. That was virtually the chassis that took my career to the next level. So,
and was that when they got to that point? Obviously the power steering thing was obviously ahead of its time and a new thing, but I remember hearing about the Bac Kar kind of coming into that 90s time frame. Was that pretty ahead of its time at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. That thing was so light. Lumpy hated it because it didn't have no upper bars. We didn't have any. There was nothing to support so it just had a front frame rails, and then we bridged it underneath, so all the weight was low. It just had a hoop that held the shocks, and it was so light in the front. They hated it because there was no bars. Cars got them, kind of that way now. There's cars out there without that, but at that time, that was. We went to places where when we ran all pro races, they were like, "Get that thing out of here," and it's like, "Why? It's not in your rule book," And we would leave, and next time we'd come back, that was in their rule book. So we had to make bars that we'd bolt in, but we'd take them out after we left, an all pro race. So.
Okay. Did you ever actually show up to a race and they wouldn't let you run because of it, or did you end up pleading your case?
We had to fight a lot. Yeah, we went to Slinger. Lumpy didn't want us racing there, and Bob Abbott says, and he was nice about it. He's like, "Man, Brian, I'm concerned for your safety in this thing, and this is a fast track." And I'm like, "I got the best roll cage around me." I'm like, "So what if what are you worried about the stub for? You should worry about the cage, So we had to argue and talk, and, there and Nashville. And I went to that all-pro race in Nashville, and they want me racing there. So, but yeah, Les always had his hands full arguing with people.
Yeah, I would definitely imagine. But a little bit before we get into that, once you built that new Bac car after that '84 season and kind of up into that '90s portion, did really much go on? Did you end up making it down to Madison at that point, or?
Yep. Well, not a lot. I mean, at that point, I was trying to race the CWRA.
Okay. So that's what you're doing, CWRA, yeah.
And get my feet wet into that and get competitive and learn the chassis. And I had to laugh one time. I'm running the car, and Dad's like, "Let me take that thing for a drive. Take it for a hot lap." I'm like, "Okay." He comes out and he's like, "How on earth can you drive this thing?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "What's the caster at on this thing?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's like whatever you guys set it to when we built it. When's the last time you checked it?" "I don't know. When we built it." So, I mean, it was a learning experience of, you got to keep after things, and you got to go after it, So somehow we had, I think we changed to A-frame, and at that time we ran like 0 caster on the left and like 2 on the right. And somehow I got the caster the wrong way, and the ball joint was in front. I mean, you really had to horse it, and I'm like, "Oh, this thing's just hard to drive, And I'm like, I don't know anything,
Sure.
So, yeah. So Dad would see me struggling out there and hop in there and tell me, "Yeah, you got to figure something out." And like, "Oh, got that on the wrong side." So, but yeah, so I mean, that was just strictly learning there for those years. And I was getting really competitive, and learning that I had to manage my money. I didn't have any money. I had some good, small sponsors, but had to manage it to survive. So,
yeah. So then 90s time frame, new Bac car, what was it? Was that new car fast right out of the box, or?
Well, actually the version before that would have been 88, I think. Yeah, that was the when they went to the 3-link. So this would have been the one just prior to that. And it was pretty light, and that was the one that I started winning. I won winning races at Sands, and
okay.
Then Wausau, I won the track championship at Sands. Got Gross Trucking to sponsor me. They picked me up, and that was a good sponsor. And then 90 was when we came out with the new chassis, and then that thing was on fire. We won Sands track championship, won State Parks track championship, the Deachin's Memorial, and I think it was the next year that I just started. Well, I got mad at State Park Speedway. I mean, the Larry Deachin's race was everything to me.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up watching, being around Larry, and well, when during that crash, I mean, me and your dad Sarge was the guy's name that helped my dad, and he had a camper, and he parked right next to that opening in that pit wall at Kakana. I mean, we jumped off top of that camper and we ran over there. We got close. Baird grabs him by the arm and says, "Well, there's no place for us," But I mean, it meant a lot to me, and we had gotten in a wreck before the Deachin's Memorial, and I think we actually put a stub on it. I need Chet here. He's my record keeper on all this stuff. So
okay.
So we worked all night, never slept, and got to State Park. And that time, you couldn't buy burnished brake pads. It took forever to get the brake pads to seat in, and I had to have new rotor and new pads on there because we broke the suspension off of it or whatever happened. So I got there, and after practice was all done, they're getting ready to qualify, and I asked Bickley, I'm like, "Hey, I need to break my brakes in, this is the Deachin's race, and I'm like, I won't get up to speed. I just need to make like 3 laps. I got to ride the brake, get some heat in these pads because they just don't stop. Back then, those pads, they just weren't that good. And
mm-hmm.
and he just wasn't going to let me. And I'm just like, this race means everything to me. Our crew worked around the clock. We didn't sleep, and you're going to deny me a chance to qualify, because what it was is there was a lot of good cars running then, and you had to be, you weren't just going to make it, you had to be pretty good to make the race. And I couldn't believe he wasn't going to let me do it, So I'm trying to back up and down pit road. Well, everybody's trying to qualify. I couldn't, I can't get no heat in these things. If it was the back, we could jack it up and, and spin it and ride the brake.
Sure.
I can't do anything with the front, and the pads don't fit from the back to the front. There were smaller ones in the back. And so that was when I was like, all right, I went out to qualify, and I go roaring around, dragging the brake all the way up to, and they, he's waving the green flag. I stop, back up, turn, and I trying to drag my brakes around. So he runs out with the wrecker and blocks me, so I can't qualify. So I go around trying to take my lap. I go in turn one. I can't. I almost ran. They didn't have a wall then. I almost ran right off the racetrack, So I didn't make the first.
So they're that bad without working a minute. Okay.
Yeah, you had to have at least 2 laps of holding the brake to get heat in them. They were just nothing there, and we didn't make the race, and we had to go in the semi, and we won the semi, made it into the second race, ended up winning the second feature, but. I was so mad at him. I was like, I had to laugh because Dale Danielski last year, I went to that racers reunion at Oktoberfest, and he had a board there with articles, of me, and I'm looking at him like, yeah, track champion boycotts track, and I'm just laughing. I'm like, holy cow, there was actually an article about this, So anyway, he's the one that actually pushed me out of, I'm just like, I'm done with weekly racing. I'm just,
Sure.
And I was working back then. I had to have a job, and we're racing and working and not sleeping, and this is how you're going to treat me, And so we decided to go to Madison, and it changed everything for me. Absolutely changed everything for me. Dick Melius was the track steward, and I think he helped promote the track. And he goes, hey, and we get, I work. And then we get there, so we missed practice. He goes, hey, you guys need some practice? What? It's like, yeah, I'll give you guys some time to practice, before you qualify. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, if I could have a couple laps, that'd be great, And so, after whatever division was done, he gave me a couple laps, He said, just don't push it. I'm like, no, I'm happy, And they just treated you like a driver, They were happy to have you there, and it was a change in my, attitude towards racing, because it was like, man, they promoted you, they promoted drivers down there,
yeah.
And it changed my attitude on everything. And Wayne Erickson ran the track back then, and I told him, I'm like, I can't believe, I'm thank you for letting me practice. He goes, the worst thing that I could do is have you start up front and ruin the show, because you didn't get, a couple laps of practice. He says, it doesn't do me any good. He says, yeah, I get it. You couldn't, I'd like you to have you here, but I get it. You're working. And I just like, holy cow, common sense. This is nice.
Right.
So, yeah. So, that changed me. I was dedicated to Madison after that. And that was, Ed and Todd, they're the ones that helped me advance my career by racing down there. So,
and yeah, I know you had a lot of success at Madison in general, and then you ended up winning a championship down there, right?
Never did. We never.
Oh, really? Okay.
We never.
I thought you did.
We were spreading our wings at that time. We were trying to go, and I wanted to win the World Cup 400 at Odessa, Missouri, so bad. I-70. Because Dad won that. That was the one track that I wanted to run at and win that race. So, and we were doing that. We were doing some ARTGO races, and we just didn't dedicate to that. But we ran every chance we could there. So yeah, that I-70. That was we started going there when I had that new car. Oh, we were so fast, but something always happened. One year, I think I finished fifth, and we dropped a valve. I finished fifth on 7 cylinders. That's how fast the car was, and it was crazy. That And I think we qualified. Yeah, we qualified second the first time I'm there. And Carl Wagner told me, because that was an all-pro race, you didn't have to have mufflers. I'm like, I want to get rid of them mufflers. I want to hear this thing roar, And he's like, you leave them on there. That 9-to-1 is built for that muffler, that back pressure. I'm like, no, I want it gone. Leave them on there. And I'm like, so I go qualify, and the guys are telling me, the announcer goes, oh, we got son of Tom Reffner here. And, unfortunately, sounds like he has some engine troubles, Because I got this quiet car out there. Everybody else got straight exhaust, and I come by the first lap and set the, second fastest time, and I guess there's nothing wrong with this car. So that was pretty funny, but yeah, I mean, I met a lot of good people there. They were all supportive. I never bought any tires for the race. I didn't know my first time there was going to be, and Wayne Willard, who owned I-44 Speedway, I didn't know him at the time. He comes up to me. He goes, boy, where's your tires? I'm like, I don't have them yet. He goes, didn't you qualify second, son? I'm like, yeah. He goes, and you didn't think you were going to make this race? And I'm like, nope. And he goes, everybody else has picked their tires. You think you got anything left over there? I'm like, I don't know. We'll see tomorrow. And why you wait until tomorrow? Well, I don't have enough rims. I got to practice on these rims, and then we're going to get tires on them. Why don't you come with me, son? And I didn't know who he was, So we walk over to the tire truck, and he rolls up his pant leg off his boot and pulls this roll of cash out of there, and he goes, tells the tire, he knew the tire guy, and he's like, you give this boy as many tires and rims as he needs to win this race tomorrow. I'm like, I can't pay you back for these tires, I mean, he goes, here again in my life, I didn't ask you to pay me back for these tires, boy. And anyway, so I got to meet him, and we ended up racing his track through the ARTGO Western Swing. But okay. I mean, there's a guy that he goes, I just want you to win, and he was not a fan of Larry Phillips, and Larry Phillips was winning everything there. Okay. And that's what I come to find out. He just wanted somebody to beat Larry, and
he thought you were the chance.
And I was. I mean, it was funny because my dad and Larry, they tangled all the time, and before I left, my dad goes, it's like, yeah, you don't take any crap from Larry Phillips. It's like, okay. So he's lined up behind me at the start of this race. We're on pit road. We're getting ready to go out there. Me and Les are standing by the door, and he wanders up, and he goes, hey, son. He goes, me and your daddy, we had our issues. He says, I hope me and yous don't have any of those issues. And I'm like, I look at him, I'm like, I don't think we are. He's all smiley, and he goes, my daddy told me if you so much as wiggle at me to send you out of the ballpark. He looked at me, and he goes walking back. Les goes, I don't think that's what he is wanting to hear. But yeah, they dropped the green. We took off, and that was the year that they gave the top two in time the chance, 5,000 extra if you wanted to start in the back. Tony Walls had fast time, and he was driving for Phoenix Racing, and I was like, he took it, and I'm just like, they wanted me to take it. I'm like, well, I've spent my entire life short track racing. I am not coming through this garbage pile behind me, Yeah. If I can start up on the front row, I'm starting on the front row. We're rolling from here. So, but yeah, that was the one that he ended up getting burned in really bad. So they had a crash. They had a caution. There's a picture out there, and it was the biggest flames I've ever seen in my life. I'm pretty sure they were running oxygen inhibitor because they couldn't put the fire out. Okay. He ended up getting his hands burned really bad, his face, and somebody took a video of it. I'm leading the race, and somebody wrecked behind us. He slowed down, and whoever was way behind him come in and just pile driving behind. So the back straightaway, it was literally a wall of fire. I mean, it's literally 20 feet in the air. I mean, because that's what I think they had oxygen in there. I didn't think gas could burn that hot, Yeah. Well, the flagman's freaking out with this whole back straightaway's on fire. He doesn't throw the caution. He doesn't throw the red flag. I'm in the lead. all pro, they really didn't want us guys coming down there and stealing their show. And I'm like, if I stop here, they'll probably take my lead away. So there's a video, I drive right through this wall of fire. Well, then everybody else is like, stop. And they're like, oh, well, he went through it. I better go through it. So all of a sudden everybody's going through this fire, and it's just like, finally they got smart enough to put the red flag out. But yeah, Tony got burned pretty bad in that one. But yeah, and then we led a lot of it. And then the Panner bar mount broke at the end. It sucked. Yeah, we had a fast car. I went there 3 years, tried it for 3 years, and led a ton of laps, fast every time, and just
not to bring up another one that may have gotten away on you, but I think you've had times where you had a really fast car at the Slinger Nationals and had a failure or something too, right?
Yeah. I mean, my biggest heartbreak was in that era was in '93. They had the Wisconsin Challenge Series. They were going to run 200 lap races at the Dells, 2 at Madison, and I think it was 2 at Slinger, if I get that right. So we ended up winning both 200, and the winner of that series was going to get the use of a hauler and an ASA car for the following season. Well, I mean, holy cow, ASA was big at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, I wanted to win that. We won the 2 Dells races. I know we went into that last race at Madison. I think we were 50-some points ahead of everybody else. And we had every spare part we could for that car in the infield, because you had to pit in the infield. It was 200-lap race. And the one thing we didn't have down in there that we left in the hauler was the spindles. And we ended up cracking a spindle pin. And it didn't wreck, because I felt something goofy going in the corner, pulled in the pits, and I'm just like, Les, like, the spindle's cracking, and the spindles are out in the hauler, And I mean, all we virtually had to do was finish that race, but we couldn't finish. And at the halfway break, we went out and got the spindles, put it back together just so we could run some laps. But we lost. Robbie Reiser ended up winning that championship. And
okay.
And I was devastated, and it's like, not that I could afford it to do the ASA thing, but it was just, that was such a huge prize out there, and we were on top of our game, and then to just not get it was heartbreaking. So the Slinger Nationals, we had that one. We pitted early, and a hood pin went through my tire. Somebody's the clevis pin, and opened up and punctured the tire, and that was the end of that one. Yeah. So a lot of racing, woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Right.
But yeah, that was a good start to those years. That was when things really started, taking off, and I had just an absolute great crew, and we were living like rock stars back then. We were drinking more and partying more than we probably should have, but we were having success, and everything was coming fast, and so it was good times. So.
When did you end up saying, was it 94 that you got into ASA then eventually? And then that was right away with Don and Marilyn Finetti.
Yeah.
And how did, this is any bit I don't think I even know any of, how did you end up getting into that ride, or where did that come out of?
So I was crushed that I didn't get that free ride. Like I said, I probably couldn't afford it anyway. I was devastated. So here comes back to the Madison racetrack, and Ed Kluka and Todd Baling. They were promoting drivers back then. They had their TV or their talk show, and they're promoting people and talking, the racing up, and and that was a lot of those talks at that time. And Ken Seth and I were the two battling pretty hard at Madison back then, and Ed knew that Don Finetti driver was Jeff Neal was moving on to the Busch Series at that time, so he was going to look for a driver, and Ed is the one that got me hooked up with Finetti on that ride. So
okay.
So that was. I mean, it didn't come it didn't come together until late, because I don't think Jeff Neal actually left until right before the season started. And so it was kind of chaos when I got there, and nothing was ready because Jeff was, I think, putting his exit plan together and didn't telling anybody and yada, yada. But, so yeah, the cars weren't ready. I didn't know nothing about ASA racing, nothing. And, they had a crew there that was, who we were going to use. And that first race was at Colorado Nationals. And we get there late, and we're struggling. You got to go through tech and all this stuff with the ASA portion. I don't know nothing about their procedures or anything, and I'm trying to get out to practice. And they at that time had the coolest flagman ever. I mean, that guy would always 2 flags, and he'd always twirling. And I mean, I was always amazed at how that guy could flag. And I can't remember his name. I shouldn't remember his name. But anyway, so we go out to practice, and they didn't have lanyards on the hood pins, and then I'm buckling in the car, and I go out on track. We're rolling around. They drop the green. So I take the green flag. I go down around the corner. I come out of turn 4. How it stayed on for a whole 3/4 of a lap. I come out of turn 4, the hood. Whew, I'm like, whoa, what the? They never put the hood pins in. And where does the hood go? It floats up in the air, and it hits the flagman in the face. I'm like, you couldn't duck. You stood there, and here comes this hood, bonk, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah. So I come in, and
did he have a helmet or?
No, he had I think they were gargoyle sunglasses on, and so I'll tell you we'll continue on this story in a little bit. So I come in, and I'm like, how you guys not put the hood pins in? Well, we can't find them. So you just sent me out without it? Well, here they throw them in the seat. I'm sitting on them, like, well, I'm so excited. I know I'm sitting on the damn hood pins, and why didn't you tell me you didn't put them in, And they didn't hinge, I'm like, we got to start hinging these hoods or something, But so anyway, driver's meeting the next morning. Here's the flagman who leads the driver's meeting. Huge black eye, big bandage on his nose, and I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm like, so I gotta watch and look at him all bandaged up there. This is my first ASA race. I'm like, fantastic, the flagman, great. And they line up the cars on the front straightaway for the start, and they always took a tape measure, and they put a chalk mark, and the flagman and one other guy, that was his job. They measured specifically a certain distance, another little L shape, and put your number there. And then when you got through tech, you rolled up there, and he made sure they were all perfectly lined up. It didn't matter where that car landed. We were moving it 3 to 4 times. Moved the back end over. It's like, okay, so we push it over. No, too far. Move it back. I mean, we did that every race, and I'm just like, is this guy ever going to forgive me, And one day I'm sitting in the back of the hauler, and it's probably 7 races in. He's on a mission. I mean, he's high-stepping it all the way over to me. I'm like, oh, God, now what's he going to say to me, And Barrels jumps in the back of the trailer, and he's like, Bryan, you got that hood that flew off at Colorado? I'm like, I don't know why. I just got a lifetime supply of, I think it was gargoyle sunglasses.
Okay.
He said, they heard my story, and the glass sunglasses saved my eye, and so they want to use the story and give me free sunglasses for life. I'm like, I think it's at the shop. I'm like, yeah, if you got it, if you could give it to me, that'd be great. So I got the shop, and so the crew chief's standing there, and he goes, we ain't got that hood, I'm like, I know. And so we got back there to the spare car. I took that hood off. I took it, chucked it out across the gravel a few times, stomped on it, broke a corner off of it, took it back to the track the next race. And I'm like, yeah, it was in the corner. Here it is. And he goes, oh, thanks for bringing it. That's awesome. That was his best friend after that. I'm like, holy cow. And the crew chief goes, yeah, that's the best hood. That whatever that hood cost, that was the best money we ever spent. To get back.
Yeah, get back on his good side.
If somebody when I was going to pass somebody, he would never throw the move over flag or nothing.
Oh, really?
Oh,
so
yeah,
he was that hard about it.
Yeah, it was ugly.
Wow.
after that, I was his best friend. So, which was good timing for the following year. So, but yeah.
How was the first year in ASA? Did you win Rookie of the Year?
No. I lost it by 50 points, and that start of it was just everything went that way the whole year. It was just I wouldn't say a disaster, but nothing ever went well. We went to Berlin. So Dave Sensiba was the guy I was racing for. We were the top two that were, heading into the points for the Rookie of the Year. And that was a big deal. That was $40,000 to win that. I think so. It was $40,000 for the Rookie of the Year. So it's a pretty big deal. And he was from Berlin was his home track. And his dad actually worked for Port City.
Okay.
And I learned this out way too late because we had a Port City cars in the first race before we're going. Jeff Neal took all his notes. There's none there. So I'll call Port City and find out what kind of set to put in there. So I don't remember the guy's name. And he's like, yeah, talk to so-and-so. He'll get you set up. I said, I just need a baseline. I don't want somebody's secret recipe. Just give me something that's safe. I don't even know where to start. So we were going to Colorado, which I'd raced with my late model. It's a 3/8 mile, semi-banked, They tell me, you're going to need 2 500s in the front. And I remember what they said in the rear. And I'm like, you lying bastards. I'm like, this ain't even close. I know this thing doesn't need that heavy of springs, And so Scott Hansen was down the street. He drove for Jerry Gunderman. And
okay, yep.
He ended up, being the best help that, and he was, as far as Don Finetti, he had a trucking company, Gunderman had a trucking company. They were somewhat competing. They were friends, but they competed, and that was virtually the only person I was supposed to beat at the end of the day was Scott,
Okay.
Scott and I just laughed it off, but I said, Scott, this is what they told me. And he was racing Rander cars. And he's like, you can't take them kind of springs there, and so he gave me some stuff to get started, but here I find out, well, since his dad works there and I'm, he's got Port City, so they're going to do nothing to help me, beat him, So I was like, I'm on an island, got no setups, and so luckily Scott was nice enough to give me some stuff to get to some of these places, even like gears. I didn't know what gear to go in. You just can't sit there and spend time changing gears.
Yeah.
All that when you never been to some of these tracks. And at Berlin, and Dave and I were friends, Sensiba, we got along good. And there was a wreck, and I went up and around, and they didn't have a wall in the back straightaway, and I ended up dropping the two right sides off the edge of the track to miss whoever spun there. Well, it was a big drop off. Well, I hung the car up. I'm sitting there, I'm high centered on the outside of the track. I'm like, I just needed somebody to push me off, Well, these are live races. They're counting pits, or counting laps on cautions. Well, the track crew comes out there, and they pulled up behind me, and it's like I'm out the window, and I push. I waited for the pace car to go around once, twice. When they went by the third time, then they pushed me off. Like, home track advantage, nice, good job, Dave.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a chance. We didn't run that good, but I was so discouraged, and Gene Fortner was my scorer. You had to have a scorer back then, and she made uniforms, and her husband did all photography back then, and she told me, I don't remember what race it was. I was just dejected, and it's like, this is not where I want to go, and I'm just like, Finetti's probably going to fire me at the end of this year, and she come up and told me one day, and I'll never forget it. And she actually sewed it on our uniforms the following year for our championship year. She says, never give up. She just kept telling me, never give up, Brian. Don't you ever give up. And the next year she made the Lucky Rabbit. We had the stuffed rabbit she had sewn up. It had its own little uniform to match ours, and right across on there was just never give up. And we strapped that in the car every race. And so, but that was a good turning point, for me. And, then the next year, the crew chief that year, yeah, him and Finetti they didn't get along, and Finetti was a hard guy to get along with. He was just rough, and I remember one time that Finetti would, and he was good. I mean, he cleaned everything. Everything had to be spotless. Semi had to be spotless before we left. Cars had to be washed as soon as they got back. And he had this big forklift because the race shop was up here, the truck shop's down there, and he had this forklift, big forks. He'd come spear them race cars, and he had to see where he's going. So he'd have them, 10 feet in the air, and he'd zooming off down to pressure washing, but out at the truck shop. And the crew chiefs just, it irritated him so bad. It irritated me. If the thing falls off, it's junk, and leave that thing down. They got arguing, and next thing you know, he left, and then that's when the following year, then I talked Les into coming, and we got a good year pulled back together. So, which brings me full circle back to Pete Hofferman. So Pete, that was the guy that I admired, was building these engines back in that shop. And I think it was 2000, or no, it would have been 1990. So I was 94. So I think it was 93. He walked in the door of the race shop. I'm like, holy cow. To me, this guy is like, he helped Trickle win 67 features. My dad won 65 features. Built engines when he's a teenager. And
yeah.
I'm like, hey, Pete, how you doing? I hadn't seen him in years. He went off to college, and he became an engineer. And
at Hendrick, right?
No, so he was an engineer at the paper mill.
Oh, okay.
And so he goes, how you doing? And we're talking, and he goes, well, what are you doing? I said, we're getting ready to go race down to Madison. And he goes, got room for another guy? I'm like, for you? And he goes, yeah. I'm just like, absolutely, this guy's a walking genius, and so, Pete got to latched on with me, and he was part of the ASA crew, that championship year. And,
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was that year was so special for me. It was just incredible. So, but yeah, to have Pete there, and there's a guy that, look at the accomplishments that guy's had, wins those, helps Trickle win those races. My dad win that, helps me win an ASA championship, follows me down to, Ernie Irvin's shop. And
okay, didn't know that either.
Yeah,
okay.
So he went down there, helped me win a NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series Rookie of the Year, goes from there to Hendricks, becomes their R&D engineer, and yeah, incredible. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, I didn't know all that path for him and you. I didn't really realize how involved he was with you at all.
Yeah, no, I absolutely, I just couldn't believe that when he asked me, we won that championship, and he asked me, when I got to, we can get into the story on how I ended up at Ernie's place, but he asked me if they had room for him, and I'm like, they can't pay you what you're making at the paper mill. Because I didn't ask for that. He said, I just want to know if they had room for me. And I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe he came there. Yeah, it was incredible. Just one of the smartest, he fit right in that era with, Jimbo and my dad, and just how they thought, and, just create things out of the air. And so, yeah, it was incredible. Those AMCs, when I was telling you, they had oiling issues, they'd figured out how to drill the oil galley from the crank all the way up through the block, made injectors that direct injected to the bypassed the lifters. And Chevy, it was a lot easier to do that. They had a oil galley. You could put a plug in it and drill a hole in it, but you couldn't do that in AMC. And they created all this stuff on their own. It was incredible. So yeah, neat stuff.
What did your first ASA win? Did that occur at Anderson? Would that have been the Redbud 400?
So, I don't know if Toledo came first or if it was Anderson.
Okay.
I should know that. I don't. One of the two.
Okay. There was somebody, I think it's through the ranges of 1994 to 96, someone's got almost all of the ASA races on YouTube, and it's cool as heck for anybody that wants us to watch races from that era. They're all out there on YouTube. I've watched a couple of them. It's pretty
Wow,
neat.
that's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, I think it might have been Anderson. You say that. Yeah, they had 2 400 lap races, Toledo and Anderson. I won both 400 lappers.
Oh, really? Okay.
The rest of them were all 300 lappers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we should have won the Brainerd road course. I was leading it.
How many road courses did they run in ASA?
They did 2 that year. So they did Brainerd
In Topeka?
and Topeka.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was leading it, and they had competition cautions. So if you ran so many laps, you know, they threw a caution because they didn't want people pitting under green, and because of the short tracks, because you couldn't come back out in front of somebody and destroy half the field, you know. So well, we always knew if you're out in front on a bigger track, you always pitted a lap before the competition caution, so you didn't have to fight with everybody in the pits. So I'm leading, you know, and I'm like, man, it's got to be getting close to that competition caution. And Hanson, Dick Trickle, and I think Butch Miller were all behind me, but I was ahead of them. We were just killing it. We'd actually built a road race car for it. We had cambered it up and had everything ready for road racing. And I went off to some schools and learned how to road race, and we were on top of it. And I start screaming on the radio. I'm like, you should have told me that was you know, how do we miss this? Everybody else peeling in. So now I got to start behind them all, you know, and there was only a handful of laps left in the race. And it's like, nobody's talking to me. And I'm like, you can't even talk to me. And I'm like, nobody's talking to me. So I'm like, oh crap, the radio come disconnected.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they were screaming at me to stop. They even had a pit. They had some kind of pit board there trying to get my attention. And yeah. So, yeah, I came out behind all those guys. So almost half, 3/4 field pitted, and then I pitted. So I'm behind. I think I got back up to 5th or something. But yeah, that was a heartbreaker. So
yeah.
But yeah, live and learn on that one. We taped the connection together after that. So
Yeah, not a bad idea. I imagine probably just going left and right, just jostled it undone. And
just who knows? It probably a wore out junk I had too on top of it. So
yeah. But what was the final race of the 95 season?
So it was supposed to be in Vegas. They were going to have. There was a.
Is this the one in the parking lot of a hotel?
Yeah. So they were demolishing one of the casinos out there, and they decided they were going to have a parking lot race out there. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. A flat track race, you know, with these cars? I'm like, this ought to be fun, you know. So we were looking at trying to find places to practice and set up a, you know, flat track where we could try and work on a setup, you know, because there was going to be no practicing. You know, you're just going to show up. They were going to put jersey barriers out there and have a race. So that was supposed to be the last race. And it ended up being Jennerstown was the last race because they ended up canceling that race for I don't even remember what reason. It was like a month to go, and then they canceled it, which didn't break anybody's heart because it was just like, how are you going to pass anybody on a flat track in a parking lot, you know?
Yeah.
So it just didn't make sense at all. But yeah, Jennerstown was the last one. So that was the race that, you know, we had a pretty good point lead, but you know, they at that time ASA did. So Mike Eddy was racing, and he was a 7-time champion, sponsored by GM Goodwrench, and Earnhardt was a 7-time champion, sponsored by Goodrich, and ASA wanted Eddy to get the 8th championship before Earnhardt did. So they did not want me to win that championship. So I was definitely, they didn't do anything to not make it happen, but they did not want me. Eddy was the one they wanted to win. So, and my dad told me, he's like, he'd race with Eddy along, you know, on short tracks and stuff. He says, you give that man the respect he deserves, and you don't put a wheel on him, and you don't race him hard. If he's faster than you, just let him go. He'll pay it back. And I never had one issue with Mike Eddy, ever. And when he was faster, the instant he caught me, I just like wave him on by, and it's like, and if I was faster, he just repeated it back. So I was like, it was pretty cool, to have somebody give you that respect, but I was giving it to him. But yeah, we went into Jennerstown, and Eddie broke his motor, and then I think Glenn Jr. was the next in points. And so we got this thing kind of wrapped up. All we had to do is finish this thing. And I go skipping down into the corner, and pedal goes to the floor. I lose brakes. I didn't hit the wall. I had everything I could get it stopped, so I lost rear brakes. And I told Les, I'm like, I lost rear brakes. Pedal went to the floor, because it just plowed up, So we come in, and they jack it up, and the bracket on the caliper, it broke, and it spun around, ripped the line off. And this just is a statement of the team I had at that point. Nobody's talking on the radio. Nobody. And the hood went up. Somebody's taking the cap off the reservoir, getting brake fluid. Another guy's getting a cap for the put on the line. Somebody's getting wrenches to bleed it. All I start hearing is, pump it up and then down, pump it up. And so we're bleeding the brakes, and nobody's yelling, nobody's screaming. And they got me back out there, and I don't remember. It only took a short bit of time, but it just showed me how good a crew I had, that everybody knew that car so well that everybody picked their task and knew it, and just it was incredible. A
lot of people would have been in chaos.
Yeah, and I mean, it just gave me, just thinking about it now, it was everything that I loved about that team back then and what we accomplished in such a short time frame. So it was cool. It really was. So.
And then at the end of that race, did you know the Las Vegas race wasn't going to happen?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We knew that race was it. That was
okay.
going to be the championship race. So, and I can't remember who crashed. Whoever was going for the lead, they crashed. Somebody ended up getting up on the wall, and I don't remember who that was. It might have been Seneca and somebody else, but I mean, I ran these names off. I mean, these are the guys that, I went and won a championship again that raced that series forever. And, and we were walking tall, it was pretty cool. So, but yeah, that was Joe Miller, Les Bach was the crew chief, and Pete was a tire changer. Chet was helping me on that. Denny Gage, from Rapids, he was our gas man, and Goldie, he was my truck driver. He was Don's truck driver, but he hauled for him during the day and drove us around through the races. Love that guy. Yeah. He was a guy that taught me what friendships really were. He loved racing, but he would get in my face and tell me, what was real and what was important in the world, because at this point that's my livelihood, I mean, I quit my job. I'm racing full time for Frenetti, and we had a bad race. I was just grumpy and crabby, and he'd get in my face and tell me, you need to go talk to your crew. Your crew worked pretty hard today. So you better tell them how much you appreciate them. Quit worrying about what just happened. Tell your crew how great they are.
Yeah.
Because those talks, that was like, there's a reality check, Quit being worrying about yourself, and, go think the people are giving you what you got. So,
yeah.
So it was, I just was surrounded with a lot of great people back then. So, yeah. And that goes back to, Barry Bach was another one that would, straighten me out when I needed to. And he, we went to Nashville, and we were down there, and we brought a knife to a gunfight. People were soaking tires. I had no idea I didn't know you needed to soften tires to qualify there. And Dick was there, Trickle was there, and, we didn't make the race, Dick, they impounded the top 5 tires. I was like, we were like fastest in practice. We were in top of practice, and I'm like, how do we not make this race? Dick goes, why don't you take your durometer and walk over there and durometer those 5 sets of tires over there by that tech truck. It's like, why? He says, go do it. He goes, durometer your tires and then go over there. Well, that was when we realized we brought a knife to a gunfight. Everybody that ran that All-Pro series that knew you had to have a set of soaked tires for qualifying. I didn't know that, so did after that. But I didn't want to play that game. That took all the fun out of it for me. I was like, I'm not doing that. But Barry, I was there again, that was fun and not on my own, and it was pretty devastating. And Barry he had a Suburban, and we called it Smoke and Wiggle. So it was always loaded to the max. We always had it filled full of parts and a bunch of people in it. And whatever the tires are rated on, they were too light, and it just wobbled all over and it smoked, and Barry's like, he goes, we learn and we go faster. And he'd get right up in my face and he's like, we learn and we go faster. I'm like, all right, good point. It's like, you can't just have everything given to you, you got to learn some stuff along the way. And Barry, we left that race, and we were staying at a hotel, and it was up on a hill in Nashville. So Barry gets Smoke and Wiggle, and we're at the base of this hill, and the hotel's up there, and he stops. And I'm riding shotgun, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's looking up there. And he goes, I think we can do it. It's like, think we can do what? I think we can jump it, miss the canopy, and land at the door. You're out of your mind. You wanted to take the Suburban, launch it off the top, and there was a canopy, and he figured he could, if he had the trajectory, he could miss the canopy and then land at the front door that was under the canopy. And I'm like, you're nuts. He floored it. The thing couldn't go fast enough to get there, but that was just, that was the kind of people I had around me. They just to lighten the situation up, you know. But and we lost Barry too young too, It was devastating for me. He was like my really good buddy at that time. I just always, there's another case. I just always wondered where Bac Kar would have went. Barry and Les, they were building stuff and they were dreaming and they were, they were going to be left-hander. They were clearing out area. They were going to start making spare parts and mass producing. And Larry Phillips came up and bought 2 chassis from them, and they were going to take off. And and then tragedy happened, the snowmobile accident. So.
Well, Larry Phillips even came up and got chassis from him?
Yeah, they bought 2 of them. And he ended up cutting one apart to try and copy it. But, he came up. When we kicked his butt, he was like, the only way I'm going to do that is buy some of these. So,
interesting, yeah.
He wanted to be a dealer for him down there, and I was in the middle of all that, but he wanted to be a dealer for him. But then that was the year that Barry ended up getting, killed. So,
okay.
Terrible.
Yeah, terrible is right. To go back then to wrap up the 95 ASA season, you win the championship. What does that feel like? You talk, early on in your racing career, you have a dad that's winning, 60 some races in a year, winning all these races, and now finally stars are aligning a lot in your career.
Well, it was, and Les and Chet, and they built me another super late model, that 95 year, and Carl built a really good 9-1 for it, and that was the same year I went and won the Dixieland 250, so not only was I, running the ASA thing, I was coming back and running some, big specials and winning those. So, to me, it was really cool. And I was like, man, the team we had, it was just incredible. And the one thing that in ASA is the champion the following year got to pick his pit spot at every track. I was like, the one thing that you always wanted to have, I'm like, that the tracks, you go to like Anderson and you can pick, you're the first guy that picks a spot in these short pit stalls. It meant everything, because if you didn't like a guy and he was ahead of you and your spot was ahead of him, you could easily just stop right here. He can't get out. He's got to back up and more than likely you come out ahead of them, you know. And I'm just like, I just couldn't wait to go to every track. I'll take that spot right there, you know. I mean, that was the one thing that I wanted so bad. And we had plane tickets for Vegas. So Don's like, we're going to go out to Vegas. We can't, they're non-refundable. We'll go out and party out there. So we went out there and we're having a good time. And Hanson's bunch was out there too, you know, and Scott's guys. And we're hanging out at a bar and we're drinking and BSing and those guys like picking on Don, you know, Scott Hanson's guys. He was fairly gullible, you know, and it's just like he was bragging about how, you know, we kicked their butt and, you know, so they'd heard enough of that, you know, from him. And unbeknownst to me, they're telling him, you know, I was leaving, you know, so they were just like, take that, you know, and there was a lot of rumors flying around. Ed Klukla was trying to get me to go to Ernie Irvin's ride, asking me if, you know, he's like, you want me to promote this and that and that? And I'm just like, the only thing I wanted, I had this crew that was phenomenal. I just won the championship. I want to go to these tracks again, you know, and I'm like, the last thing was even in my mind was going to the next level. It wasn't my mentality. I wasn't that guy that charged off into, you know, to the next adventure. I just wanted to reap the benefits of this one right here, right now. We're out there, and so we went our own way, and Finetti stayed at that bar, and we got back. We all went to bed, and all of a sudden my phone rings, and it's Finetti. He's like, it's in the morning. He goes, pack your shit, we're leaving. I'm like, well, we're not supposed to leave for 2 more days. Be in the lobby in a half an hour. All your stuff. Get all your guys come down. All right, whatever, you know. Crabby, you fool, you know. So we go down there, and he won't even talk to me. It's like, what are we doing? Why are we leaving? Won't say a word. Not a peep. So I'm like, whatever. So I'm driving the rental car, and I'm a little irritated, you know. It's like, you can't even talk to me. So we go up to the stop sign, you know, and we're going back to the airport. So I'm brake checking this rental car, and I'm just holding the gas down. Smoke's rolling out. And Don's looking around like, what's going on? And I'm just like, I'm going to melt this rental car down before I take it back, you know. I was like, whatever, you know. So we go back, and we got on the plane. Doesn't say a word the entire way back. Not a peep to me. So we get back in the race shop, and I was living in a house that he owned next to the race shop. So I'm like, whatever. So everybody's kind of confused, you know, we don't know if something's going on with him, what, you know. I walk up to the race shop, get my key out, because we all put our cars in there before we left. It won't open. Can't get the lock to open. Like, what the heck? Go down to his house, you know, and I'm like, Don, I can't get in the shop. Yeah, I changed the lock. You couldn't tell me before I walked up there? He's like, well, I'm shutting the team down. I'm like, what did you say? So I'm shutting the team down. I said, we just won an ASA championship. You're shutting the team down? So that's what I said. I'm like trying to digest this, you know. So then the German Reffner in me rears its ugly head, and I just start F-bombing him. I call on him every name in the book I can think of. I mean, I'm screaming at him in his house. I'm like, well, go open that shop so I can get my car out of there, you know. And so we're walking up there, and I am literally abusing him with anything that I can think of to walk up. I just like, you ungrateful piece of garbage. Every name I can think of, I'm just calling him the whole way. It's quite a walk up there, you know. So he's getting abused the whole way. You'd think he would say something to me, you know, anything, not a peep. Opens the door. I'm loading my stuff up, you know. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I told the guys, I'm like, you shut the race team down, take everything that's yours, you know. And they're like, what, huh? You know, so everybody, we get our stuff, we leave. And I'm like, I living in his dang house, you know, is this house here. I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, all right, I don't have a place to live. So there was a bar in Franklin that we hung out at. Scott Hansen, his guys hung out. So that was our local hangout. So I go down there, and I ain't else to do. I might as well start drinking, you know, figure out what I'm going to do with life, you know. I'm in there.
Yeah, pretty devastating in the.
Oh, yeah. The guy didn't say a word to me. They're shutting the team down. I was like, I know you're a fool, but it's like, whatever. So I'm down there and drinking away, and it's getting kind of late. All of a sudden, one of Scott's guys comes bebopping in and goes, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Yeah, Finetti just shut the race team down." He did, "What?" So he calls Scott's guys that are out in Vegas yet and tells them, hey, the news, and they tell him, he's like, "Oh, no, we were telling him all night how Bryan's leaving, you're done, you'll never win another championship." And they said, "Head down, he must have believed us, He didn't say a word to me." And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I'm sitting there, and I close the place up, and I'm like, well, where am I going? And they said they told me you're going to drive for Ernie Irvan. I'm like, oh, really, huh? So I'm sitting there and close the bar up. So I had my Camaro out there, and like, I don't have any place to go. I'm like, had enough drinks in me. Probably shouldn't have left, but I'm like, I guess I'll go see Ernie Irvan. Let's see. So I start heading south, Well, about sun starts coming up, reality's checking in, and I'm like, this isn't me, this isn't what I do, So I drove, I think, through Nashville, and like, all right, I'm just going to go into a rest area and get some sleep. So I slept in a rest area, got out, it got late, and I went and got something to eat. And it's like, I'm halfway here. I might as well just go. Might as well go see what North Carolina and Mooresville and Charlotte's all about. And got nothing else to do, And so I got a gas station, bought a toothbrush and some toothpaste, and go brush my teeth and take a truck stop, and head on into Charlotte and drive around Mooresville, and slept in my car for the second night.
And before you left, like after kind of hearing what, those guys had told Don, did you like think about like going back and like trying to like clear the air, or were you just?
I was so mad at him.
Didn't matter at that point.
Yeah, at that point, no. I'm just like, maybe a week down the road or something, I would call him, whatever. I didn't know. I'm like, but at that point, I was so mad. So I sleep the next night. I get up, and I'm going to drive. And I got up early. Sleep in your car, you don't sleep real well, So it was probably like 4 or 5 in the morning. So I'm like, I got no map. I don't even know where to go, So I pull in this gas station. I'm like, hey, do you know where Ernie Irvan's race shop is? I was just going to drive by it, So it was they called it Mooresville's Race City, USA. He goes, yeah, he's in the drag strip motorsport, because everybody knew everything about racing in that town, and who was where. And like, okay. He said, they all have a sign out front. You'll see it, So there was the Mooresville drag strip, and then there was a one loop around there that had some race shops around it. So I drive in there and I find it, and there it is, I'm like, so the sun's just starting to maybe crest up a little bit. So I pull up in the parking. There's not a soul in the parking lot, and I'm a little tired. So I'm just like laying my head back, and I'm like, I wonder where I go from here. Maybe go see where Mark Markin's shop is or something. I was sitting there daydreaming, and all of a sudden somebody taps on the window, and it's about scared the daylights out of me, and here's this older guy standing there, and I roll the window down, and he goes, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, okay. He goes, can I help you? And I'm like, no, I'm just checking out some race shops. And he goes, I see you got Wisconsin license plates on you. From Wisconsin? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you drove all the way down here? Yeah. He goes, well, what's your name? And I go, Bryan Reffner. He looks at me. He goes, yeah, right. And I said, no, it's Bryan Reffner. He goes, you're serious? Well, it's Ernie's dad, Ernie Irvan's dad, and Vic. He goes, you're seriously Bryan Reffner? And I said, yeah. He goes, Ernie's putting together a short list for driving his truck, and they just made it yesterday. It's got 3 drivers' names on it, and yours is on there. And because they hadn't called or talked to anybody,
Sure.
And he goes, Ernie will be here in a little bit. You want to talk to him? And he goes, you better talk to him. I'm like, okay. So, yeah, I would have, if he wouldn't have asked me my name, I'd have rolled the window up and left. And it's just how crazy it was.
Sure.
And
so even with all that effort of just driving down there, you probably wouldn't have walked in there. And
no, I would have never. never would have went in. No, it was just not my thing. Not my thing, you know. I figured I was just gonna try and maybe find somebody else to give me an ASA ride or something, you know. And
were there ASA teams out of the Carolina area, or
there might have been. I think there was a couple down there, but yeah, I didn't. You know, when you win a championship and there's only a handful of teams that you know are at that level, it's like, what are you really gonna do, you know?
Sure.
But yeah, no, I would have never walked in, never. And so I went in, seen Ernie, and talked to him, and you know, and he was asking me about this and that, and it was funny. He's like, "Yeah, we been checking you out. We called Dick Trickle and asked him, you know, about you and a few others." And he said, "Just so you know, Ted Musgrave's not your friend. Just so you know." And I'm like, "Okay, I kind of knew that," because Ted at this time was down there.
Oh, sure.
And yeah, like, okay. So then
he wasn't a reference on your resume.
No, and he labeled off a few others that gave me good, you know, things. And he goes, "Well, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I just driving around." I was like, "They shut my ASA team down." He's like, "You won the champ? I thought you won the championship." And I'm like, "Yep." He goes, "Who does that?" "Don Finetti." And he goes, "That's the craziest thing I ever heard in my life," you know. And so Ford, you know, that was the first Ford championship that they had in a while, you know. So Ford was backing me because you had to have a manufacturer's rep, you know, prove, because Ernie was a factory team too, you know. So, you know, they had already approved his drivers that he was looking at. So yeah, so he goes, "Well, if you got no place to stay and you want to hang out here," he's like, "Go ahead." He's like, "You can hang out with the guys and work on a truck or, you know, whatever." And so he goes, he takes and introduces me to Jay Smith, the crew chief. And so we were talking with Jay, and Jay's like, "Well, let's go. Why don't you meet the team? We'll go out tonight and have a burger and some beers." And it's like, I got nothing else to do. Sounds great to me, you know. So I go out with them, you know. They wanted to meet the crew. And so we're talking and we're drinking. And then Jay goes, "Well, I think, you know, it's getting late, you know, and it's getting cold out, you know." He said, "I think we can go test at Bristol. I think we'll test you at Bristol." And then he goes, "I'll talk to Ernie tomorrow and see if we can get a truck together and go test at Bristol." And it's getting to like 40 degrees down in the Carolinas already, you know. And I'm like, "Well, whatever," you know. I'm like, I'll do anything you want, you know. And so we couldn't go to Bristol, but we went to Greenville Pickens, a little flat track or a little small track. And
yeah,
like, let's right up my alley, you know. And so they put a truck together. We went and tested, and I think they tested Rick Crawford and somebody else. Can't remember who the third one was. And Ernie said, "Give me a week and I'll call you back." And he called me back. He says, the crew says you're from Wisconsin. You'll drink beer. They like to drink beer, so you're their driver. That's what he told me. So yeah, that's how that started.
Perfect.
Yeah, which, I mean, it was a thrill and neat at the time, you know, and stuff, but I really thought that, you know, Ernie would help my career, but he was super competitive, and if anytime I was faster, he just didn't want to help, so it kind of sucked, but, you know, it is what it is, so.
I'll just tip your mic a little bit towards your mouth. Perfect. I was just getting a little tilted to the side.
Sure.
Don't want to miss this. But so, because what was Ernie doing? Was he was still racing, right?
Yeah. No, he had just he was recovering from that wreck at Michigan.
Okay,
so,
I knew that happened. I didn't know what.
So he was in pretty rough shape at that point, and the team was actually owned by Mark Simo, you know, the No Fear group, and Boris Said was, you know, their friend, and he was kind of our team manager and stuff, and. Yeah, those guys they were the next level of fun, I can tell you that. So yeah, so that was pretty cool being around those guys.
So then that would have been 96. So then that was probably only about like the third year of the truck series.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was probably about like the super trucks, and it actually became the Craftsman Truck Series after that.
Yeah.
What was it like getting a ride in a Craftsman truck and being down there?
So the biggest thing for me was the radial tires. I had a hard time.
Oh, sure.
When the radial tires give up, they gave up, you know, and that was hard for me. We went to test at Bristol, and I mean, I'm booking it around there pretty good, and all of a sudden I lose it coming off of turn 4, and I spun it out and backed it down the straightaway, and it didn't hit anything, but I was just like, because the thing was under me, got a little bit loose, and I thought, we'll just drive it out of here. But man, once they gave up grip, it was, the trucks they had the same engines that the Cup cars did, they were pushing 800 horse, and it's just, man, that was a hard thing to get used to, and then the trucks were on, at that time, a lot of small tracks, and foot control and being easy on the throttle was a big thing. And that was hard for me to adjust in the beginning. So, but yeah, at least when I spun it out at Bristol, I didn't hit anything. They were all proud of me of that one. And I was like, I've never seen anybody spin out off a Ford, not wreck the inside wall. So,
oh yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah.
Did, and how did really that year with them guys go? Cause that was the only year that you ran for Ernie, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it started out really good. We went to Homestead, was the first race, and we were running 4th, and we had a good truck. We really did. And then the motor, we lost a cylinder. I still finished it. We ran it on 7 cylinders. It broke a valve spring, and the engine builder they had at the time detuned it after that. We never had horsepower again, which was fine on small tracks, but when you're on like Homestead and these big ones, yeah, you needed the horsepower. And when we went to a big track, we just didn't have horsepower, and that just started the downfall. So
okay,
a lot of finger pointing, and it was still. I mean, I think we had 2 or 3 poles, and
oh really? Okay,
yeah. I mean, we had the pole at Tucson, and can't remember where else. Tucson, Flemington, and I think there was another one I sat on the pole, but just didn't have it all together. Tire management was big. It was a learning curve for me. And, there was, again, I thought that, Ernie would have helped me along with some of that. It was nothing. I mean, I was strictly on my own. There was nothing that was going to come from there. And that animosity on me towards that is probably the demise of, me driving for him. And because it's at that point, I'm like, you're not going to help me. I'm like, why do I even talk to you, So it's like, it was just, and then when they were putting him back into a truck at the end of that year to work him back into the truck or the Cup Series. and he was, if I out-qualified him, he was just mad, and it's like, it's supposed to be my owner. You're supposed to be on my side,
Yeah.
It was just strange stuff. So, but yeah, we had the falling out. The engine thing was a big thing, hard to keep up. But had fun, enjoyed the racing we did, and learned a lot. And the way they did setups, I mean, Jay Smith was the crew chief, loved him to death. Worked hard. I mean, he worked his butt off to try and win races for us. But the way he went about setups just drove me insane, because they would do a setup and we'd pull it off the scales, and they had a peg on the center of the rear end, and they had truck arms on them, and he'd jack it up till the right side wheel would come off, and just before the left would come off the ground. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, we're checking bite. All right, whatever that is, And so they would measure the gap before the left side tire come off. And then if it wasn't a number that they had in their head, they had a number for like bank tracks and flat tracks, and they'd start cranking on the rear screw jacks. I'm like, well, we just set it up. What are we doing? And he goes, oh, you got to get that bite. Yeah, 1.5 inches. And I'm like, are we going to put it back on the scales to see what the wedge is? Oh, no, we set that already. We're just getting the bite. So they'd take 2 rounds out of the right rear and then put 2 in the left rear to get this number, whatever it was. I'm like, we just changed the cross, the frame height. Oh, no, we didn't. We're just changing the bite. I'm like, it drove me absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's odd.
I would argue with Jay every time, what are we doing? And then when we get back after the races, I'm like, well, put it up there so we at least know what the cross was. Well, they'd write down what the bite adjustment was, and they'd take that, put it back, put it on the scale. Well, see, Brian, it's right where it was. I'm like, yeah, but what is it before you did that?
Yeah, right.
Every time. We go to I don't know what the bank track, they had some huge number, and they'd crank the heck out of it. And Well, then the thing would be all jacked up, and you had to fit the templates and the spoiler heist, and we get there, and that's all out of whack, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, because you put the bite adjustment in it, and now it's way out of whack, and it's just, then we'd crank on stuff, and I mean, like I said, I love Jay to death because he works so hard to try and, get the best truck ready and stuff. But the way that they thought of things and did things, and in my head, I'm like, okay, they did 2 turns out of that one, 2 in this one. I'm like, so that's what we're probably here. So I'm trying to make these mental notes where we're at on wedge, to have a feel of what I'm going out on the track with, and it's crazy.
So that year, do you remember where you ended up in points?
No, I don't. Maybe 9th, something like that. I think. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So where did you end up at after? Were you in the 66, the Phelon truck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, went to this 66 truck, and that, I mean,
did that ride come fairly quickly and easily then? I mean, were you starting to be known a little bit more around there? Okay.
Yeah, that one came right away. They were looking for a driver, and went over there and met them guys. And actually Ford is the one that, there was another Ford team. So they sent me over there. And so, I mean, I had the two fast times in my contract. I got $5,000 each for each fast time. And I knew they weren't going to pay me the bonus. Bernie wasn't going to pay me my bonuses. So I told Brian Simo and Boris, I'm like, rent me an engine for Vegas was the last race. I'm like, we had a good truck going there, and Ernie was racing there. I'm like, rent me an engine. I want, that was the going price then, was $10,000 a race. I said, get me a Yates or a Roush engine. You owe me $10,000. I know you're not going to pay me, so rent me an engine. So they agreed to it. So they got me a Roush engine. Boris was racing for Roush in the road race series.
Sure. And
so Boris set it up. I got a Roush engine. So we go there. We sat on the pole. And I out-qualified Ernie, So, and then, it doesn't make him look good. He's getting rid of me, and I just sat on the pole, So I come the next day for the race. He told all the guys on my crew that, you're not helping Brian today. So I get there, there's no crew, the car's still covered up, and I'm the pole sitter. And the NASCAR officials come over to me and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, I have no idea, because this don't look good for them. They're pole sitters, everybody else is going through tech, and my truck's sitting there, and Ernie's just being a jerk, and
okay.
So all of a sudden I just like, I got nothing to lose. So I go over to Ernie's hauler and I just start, I'm walking over there, he locked the door, So I'm just fist pounding the back of that door. I'm like, come out here like a man, why don't you get your ass out here like a man, and I'm beating on the back of that door, and all of a sudden my feet aren't touching the ground. I'm like, what's going on? Well, Carl Wagner's got me. He's got me in a bear hug. This ain't the place. This ain't the time. And he carries me away out of there. So Wayne Otten was with the truck series, So then he's like, they had to go get a hold of Brian Simo and Boris, and what are you doing? This isn't going to look good with our pole sitter out here. And this is looking like a joke. And so they made Ernie send the crew back, and get the truck ready to go out there. And then there again, I mean, we had a good truck, and that thing lost a cylinder. I still finished. I think I finished 5th or something on 7 cylinders, but that was another race we probably would have won, and we had such a good truck. But yeah, that was the other place that I had a fast time at. And, they never paid me that $5,000. I knew they won, so. Yeah,
probably not. Try to fix a dents in the hauler.
Yeah, there was a lot of Reffner anger that would pop up now and then.
Yeah. Wow, that's it's quite the thing. I'm sure NASCAR didn't want to see that. Got a new series that's 4 years old at that point. Pulsar doesn't have a crew.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, but that was just kind of the way he was, and it was one of them life lessons, and if I wouldn't let it bother me, I just dealt with it, but it just hometown kid that just wanted to win, you know, and I didn't want to play politics. It just wasn't in my nature. So
it's a tough game to play when you want to just race and be the best.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So yeah.
And how long was the truck for the Feline? Was that just a 1 year again?
1.5 years. We went there for 1.5 years, and they were building a new team. They were a road race team, and they were getting into trucks. So they had to build trucks, and we were building. We were going good, but it's a high pressure, you know, deal. Everybody wants to win out of the gate and go, and there again, we had actually started this in that second year. We just started actually getting really good. We had finished, I think, 4th at Flemington. We went to Nashville. We were running really good there, and then the owner decided he was going to change, get rid of Les and me, and get a different crew chief and driver, and so.
Okay, so Les Spock was with you at.
I had brought him in there for that second year.
Second year, okay.
Yeah, so because it just the crew chief they had was a road racer, you know, and he just knew nothing about oval, and we were trying to make it work, you know. And at this point, I had enough information on setups and stuff from what we were running with Ernie's team, and wanted to carry it over. But it was best to get Les. You know, when Les was there, then we started really running good. So,
so that gets ended midway through a year. Then where did you end up?
We bounced around, did a lot of bouncing around. Didn't really know what to do at that point, you know. So, it really was getting a little bit of the, you know. Ran a few races here and there, you know, ran for John Conley for a little bit. He was a great guy out of Michigan, and, you know, but it was one of them things that, you know, you knew what it took, you knew the equipment it took, and you worked hard to try and get close to that. But at the end of the day, you had to have the money and all the other stuff to go with it. And, you know, we were making do with some of those teams, but, you know, it just it was getting where money was money. So, but yeah, so then that's where, well, actually, when you started racing at Marshfield, and my dad, because I think it was Paul and Charlie Menard were running a Legends car at Marshfield.
My dad would have started running at. So my dad would have ran at. Him and Grandpa shared a car in probably 97, 98, 99.
Those would have been, okay, that's what it was. Yeah, so they were running at Marshfield. That's what it was.
Yeah, I didn't run for Marshfield for a while yet.
Yeah, all right. You're right. So they were pitting next to them, and to Charlie and Paul. And I had that late model that we had built that was just been sitting, you know, for a year or two now. And my dad goes, talking with Paul, he's going to, you know, try and go somewhere and do something. He said, you should let him run your late model. And so he's just sitting there. I'm like, let him. If he wants to run it, go ahead. You know, if you think he's, you know, good driver, and, you know, that's your decision. Let him, you know. So we had invited Paul to drive it, and, you know, and that opened the door to John, and he was looking to, you know, find a path forward for his career, and, you know, and we just had a chance to talk, and we pulled together the Menard truck team. So, you know, that was how that one came together. So,
in the Menard team, that came together in 99 or 2000?
2000.
Okay.
That was 2000. Yeah. Yeah. So then, I mean, that was another team. We built it in Indianapolis of all, you know, with the RL team. And, you know, that was really cool. You know, you had the RL team there, and we were building that from scratch. Another super bunch of guys we pulled together for that. And at the end of that year, that was when we won Texas. Should have won California Speedway the very next race. We were leading it, and then we had to change motors before we started the race. And those things, the clutch was mounted in the bell housing. You had to shim it just right. Well, we missed a shim and didn't release. I come into pit, pushed the clutch down, rolled it off the jack, and so we ended up losing spots on trying to get back up in the air, get the wheels back on it. But yeah, and then the internal turmoil. I mean, at this point, I'm starting to realize that not only did I meet a lot of fantastic people in racing, there's a lot of evil people in racing.
Mm-hmm.
So racing's in its heyday, you know, this person wants that person's job. And I had no idea that you could actually have somebody on your team that didn't want you to win, you know, that they were more concerned about their goals and whatever they ruined to get to that goal didn't matter. I had no comprehension that could even be a thing, you know, because my entire life if you're on a race team, you go out there to win. That's what you did. I had no idea that there was evil people like that, undermining a team, and you know, and that's what we had going on there. And John, you know, racing was his hobby. You know, he didn't want issues. You know, and he starts hearing about issues. You know, I guess way for your issues, just make them go away. You know, because
he's got a business to run.
He got enough headaches just with that, you know, and so that's kind of what happened there. It was sad because we were on a rocket ship straight up. You know, we went to Texas, and when we won that race, you know, we sat on the pole and won that race, and we were just dominant. And we went to California, and we were leading that race, and we were really going to go. And nope, you get one bad apple, and the whole thing starts crumbling. So crazy.
And you know, obviously, living that life where we're at this race team for 1 year, this race team for the next year, having to jump a little bit around. Obviously that's a lot different lifestyle than a lot of people have to live. And obviously there's some sports where people do that. I mean, did you think like, hey, at some point I'm going to settle in and NASCAR land's going to be home, or did it feel slightly unsettling, or was there really never any time to really think about it, just focused on racing with where you're at?
I was developing the bitterness towards the racing, you know, once I realized that you could actually have those type of people on your team, I was losing my drive for it, you know. And I mean, I'd spent my life working endless hours, you know. I mean, cripes, in those early 90s, I mean, I was living on Mountain Dew. I mean, I was working. I'd have to be at work at 7, you know, and we'd go party, we'd race, close a bar up, drive home. I mean, we virtually a couple hours of sleep a day, you know, and that was the dedication I had, you know, and that's what everybody around me had, and I had no idea. Once I learned that was a thing, and you really, it sucked the life out of me, you know. When the Menard thing fell apart, it was astronomical, you know. It was terrible. That was a gut punch that I was having a hard time getting over. So, you know, that was the engine builder that wanted to be the team manager, you know. So his idea to be the team manager was to tell John how horrible we were. We just won a race, and, you know, and it's just like, you gotta be kidding me, you know. Just tell lies, you know. I mean, the ability for somebody to straight tell lies to your face is just like, I couldn't believe people could do that, you know. It's like, should have known better, you know, but I was a naive kid out of Rudolph, so.
Yeah. This having the team of just good old boys from home. It wasn't obviously not the same down there,
right? You know,
while you're in Indianapolis, but regardless, NASCAR land.
Yeah, and I mean, it was just the when you get so many people involved in a team, it's just it's hard to get all those different personalities to mesh and pull in the right direction. So,
and obviously, NASCAR being what it is, you have, the politics side of it. And, obviously I'd imagine you probably heard of those things, had inklings of that, but then, I imagine it was probably just hey, yeah, that won't happen to me, or hey, this isn't going on around me. And then,
I had heard about it, and, like at Ernie's team, when I was with Ernie, I think they turned over, it was 20 some guys went, left, because it was nothing. You just drag their toolbox across the street. If somebody was offering them another, a little more money, that's where they went. They didn't care. and then they'd bash so-and-so, and then you got the guys that were good that wanted to go to a cup team.
Right.
Then you find out that your car chief wants to be the crew chief, so he starts telling everybody how stupid the crew chief is, and then some start believing it, if you have a bad race, and it was like, holy crap.
Yeah, pretty quick, easy way just to kind of make the whole team just kind of bad attitude. And
yeah, and then, people latch onto that. Well, maybe there is some truth to this, so yeah, I always wondered how some guys, in like at the cup level, would be fantastic one year, and then the next year they struggle. And like after that, I was like, yeah, the car chief probably wanted to have the crew chief's job, and started his mutiny, and then next thing you know, nobody's pulling in the same direction. So
yeah, on kind of a more positive side of things, what was that feeling like when you won Texas?
It was incredible. It was the highlight of my career. You had gotten to that level, and like I said, and it wasn't that we just won the race. Like I said, we sat on the pole, set a new track record at Texas.
Okay.
And when we went to qualify, and I told Les Bach, I'm like, I ain't lifting. He's like, don't wreck that truck. I'm like, I ain't lifting. I'm setting a new track record. He goes, I don't care what you do, just don't wreck that truck. So I went out there, and I held my breath, and I'm like, and it dug in there in turn 1 and 2, and I'm like, all right, I made it, never lifted, zipping down the back straight, gaining some more speed. I'm like, all right, this is it. This is easy. It's either going to stick down in there, and it did. And I don't remember much faster we were in second place, but we just laid a lap. And I just remember I come in there, and they stop you on pit road, and, and they check your spoiler anchor and a few other things, and Jack Sprague comes over and drops my window, and he goes, you didn't lift, did you? And I'm like, nope. And he goes, you got brass balls, man. That's all I can say. But yeah, I mean, that was how good that truck was. And then we went out, and there again, we had a bad pit stop, fell back into the pack right at the end, and it came all the way came through a bunch of cars and got all the way and led, so it was definitely a dominant truck. So it felt so good. I mean, the unfortunate part of that race is Tony Roper, was killed in that race. Yeah. And I have to look at and Tony was my friend. Tony's dad, Dean, raced with, my dad. They were friends when they go to Missouri. Well, when I was going to the World Cup 400, I met Tony because he was from Missouri. And so our dads knew each other, and, we kind of were on this parallel path. So we kind of knew each other really good. And Renee, my wife, and Tony's wife, Michelle, they got along, so they were friends, and it's not like we hung out because we were in 2 different states, but when we were at the track is people that we had a lot to relate to, so like
right.
When we would have, before driver intros, you're all standing around. Tony was always the guy that I talked to, and we just, got along, and it was tough. We went to the hospital the next morning, and that was the toughest thing ever. I unfortunately can't remember winning the race. I have to look at the pictures and stuff because all I remember is the next day at the hospital, and seeing Michelle's face and stuff. But horrific. I mean, just super high, and then the next day you're down here. It was crazy, but he did what he loved, and but yeah, it was a shame, absolute shame.
Yeah, that's it's definitely a way to take the wind out of your sail after haven't just done that, but yeah, tragedy for that family.
Yeah, and I went by, and I you could tell he hit it head on. I didn't see the wreck, I was out in the front, and I asked Les, how's Tony doing? And he never replied, and I was like, he says, just let's concentrate on the race right now. We'll check on Tony afterwards. And I mean, but they had already kind of knew that things weren't good. So
sure.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it was, the win part was just fantastic. So, yeah.
So then, done with the team Menard, then where, you know, then did you end up going into doing some more ASA stuff after that, or where did?
I did. I went to run a few races for as Kevin Swinski's teammate, and went back to the ASA. I loved ASA. I just loved those cars. I loved the way they drove. I loved everything about it, you know, and I was having fun, you know. And that was Danny Fredrickson. They got rid of him, and they put me in there, and we ran a few races. So it was fun. I mean, it was fun to go back to that small team, small group, everybody pulling in the right direction, everybody having fun, and that part I enjoyed. So that kind of brought the ASA back into my mindset, you know. And then we actually had a shop down in North Carolina, and our neighbor he knew somebody at Morton Salt. He goes, "Hey," so why don't we see if we can get Morton Salt and go racing? Like, you got a contact, I'm in, you know. So it was just weird. So our neighbor down there, you know, hooked up the thing, and we got the, you know, the Menards salt, and got with John to say, "Hey, what about doing some ASA racing, going back?" And yeah, so we came back to, I was coming back to Wisconsin. At that point, I didn't want anything more to do with that type of, I just wanted to be back where friends and family were, and
Sure.
and everything that I remembered and enjoyed. And we built, you know, started building a great team up here for the ASA thing. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and you know, then you know that was a cool thing for my childhood. And I wish, I tell people I wish I would have been older and to the point where I kind of knew and understood what I was around me, because I think I was a 10-year-old kid at that point. You know, I know you went from because it was a 2002 or 2003 you started it.
It would have been 2003. I think 2003.
Okay, because ASA ended in 05.
Yeah,
Right?
so 04
04
was last year, because we
04.
won. They had the ASL thing for a little bit in 2005. So
Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, that was always a time where I wish I really realized what I was around, because you had the first shop, then I think you still had 4 cars in there, but then moved to the bigger shop, and then there was 4 cars in there. Then did you buy like an AS, or what was did you have like an ASA North car or something? What would you?
So we had it was a superlative, or what was that car?
Or was this some ASA late model?
It was an ASA late model. That's what it was. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, ASA late model.
And then I think you started building a truck out of there. That was the Emerson truck.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah, those are really cool times for me. I was huge, and I remember that, and I just wish I could. Wish I would have been older to been able to obviously appreciate a little more. But still, I remember a ton out of it. But I think when you came back to ASA, I remember. Did you get the second year? Would have been 04. Did you finish second in points, or was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When that was another. They went to the speedways, and I was racing Kevin Swinski for the championship, and we started going to the speedways. Well, this is my thing, We went to Kentucky, and then they went to Charlotte and Atlanta, and I'm like, yeah, I'm all over this, So we started racking up points fast, and we jumped into the lead, and so it was between Kevin and I at the last race, and we started on the pole, and then Mike Garvey got around me, and drafting was big with those things, that because we had the crate, or well, it wasn't a crate motor, it was a spec motor, we ran, and he got around me, and I had championship 1. I'm like, I'm not going to race. I'm not going to take a chance of wrecking Mike, and I'm just going to tuck in on his bumper and run this thing to the end. I don't have to win this. The championship's it. All of a sudden, Carl Hartman, fantastic guy that I got to have be my crew chief. Just enjoyed that team we had. I had Dan Summers helping, and we had, Chad again, and just a bunch of great guys, and Adam Karkowski was helping me, and, we were living life again, and so all of a sudden Carl gets on the radio and he goes, "You better pass Garvey." And I'm like, there's only a few laps left, and I'm like, why, and because I knew Kevin was way back, and he's like, "Do what you can to pass Garvey, just don't wreck him," and I'm like, at that point, you had to really set somebody up to pass, and when you weren't in a pack, because if we were in a pack, I could back off him a little bit, and then I could get a run. But when it was just the two of us, if I got too far back, I'd fall out of the draft, It was real easy with those cars to know when you're on the edge of the draft, the back window just starts shaking and rattling. I'm like, yeah, you better get sucked back in, Well, you didn't have a lot of horsepower to get pulled back in, so it was real touchy to back off and get a run. So I'd ease off him a little bit. Well, Garvey knew what I was doing, so as soon as I'd back off, he'd slow up, and I was just like, I wasn't going to wreck Mike, We were good competitors and never had an issue, and we ended up finishing second. Well, here to come find out, Kevin was doing what he had to do to win. He was paying people to let him pass. I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm at, they stopped both of us on the track. They're trying to figure out the points. It was like 4 points or 6 points, and the ASA thing was crumbling down. The cops were impounding, or somebody was impounding the ASA haulers. So all this is going on. We're over here. And
that's all happening.
It's all happening after the race, yeah, because supposedly the track had paid ASA money to pay the drivers, and they didn't have the money or something. I don't know what was all going on, but that was the start of the downfall of the ASA, and so I'm standing there, and I can't remember who it was. It was one of the drivers. He comes up to me and goes, "Man," he goes, I'm glad you and Kevin were in a battle." He says, "I just got a free motor out of that." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, they gave me a motor to let them pass." I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. But that's what I guess their crew was running up and down line and getting enough people to let them by to pass me in points. So, yeah, I'm sad, but I mean, they did what they had to do, I guess. Yeah. So if they could afford it, so be it. But no.
Yeah.
It's another way to win a championship if you ever have to.
Yeah.
If you ever got money falling out of your pocket, and
yeah.
You just buy it.
Yeah, there's a couple ideas for all those people out there. Yeah. Yeah. No, I never knew that. But no, I mean, because I think at that point in my life, I was starting to race go-karts, and it was because you ran on Saturdays, right?
A lot of them, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them were Saturdays.
I can remember it was go race at, it's probably at Monster World Speedway, and then it was run home and catch the end of the ASA race and sit in mom and dad's bed, and that was the night I would get to stay up until 11 o'clock or wherever the heck it was, and catch the end of those races. But I feel like I remember that, and a night I remember knowing it came down to just hardly anything, and being able to, obviously you're watching on TV and you get to see that stuff. But then when did as drivers and teams, when did you kind of know ASA was kind of coming to an end? That
race there was when we really knew there was troubles, because whatever was going on with Charlotte and whatever the agreement they had with the ASA, whatever, that had fallen apart, and that was when the eye opener was. So and everybody had been around for so long, everybody thought, well, it was just somebody will take it over, somehow will get back, and it just never did. So that really sucked, because it was really, I really enjoyed it so much. I had such a great team, so many good people around me, and enjoying actual racing, and to have that series go away, just it sucked. So,
and through a lot of my life, I always heard ASA was, great for this reason or great for that reason. And, really everyone always, other people too, outside of our family, always talked real positive about it. Even through the 90s and then those early 2000s, even in those last few years, what really made ASA, such a great place for, all these, obviously it became a stepping stone for, and actually became a stepping stone for a lot of people to propel them into NASCAR. I look back and I have like Joey Logano's autograph that I got at Madison when he was like 14 years old. I'm like, I don't even remember that, name or, whatever. Yeah. And, but yeah, what made it so such a good series.
So the few things that I always looked at it was that they had a center section cage that everybody had to use, and they let you do whatever you wanted with the front and rear stubs. There were some rules. You had to, they had a body that was flanged and really hard to modify, cheat. So, and they had a spec engine. So they took away a lot of the cheating aspect of it. So you had an engine that, you could do a couple little things, but you weren't going to have 50 horse over anybody else.
Sure.
The body, you weren't going to be able to cheat it sideways and have it all, and there's a little bit, people would push a little bit, but you're only going to get a half inch, maybe an inch tops, because they were such a thick flange body, you couldn't do much with them. And then that center section was just, you didn't have these high buck chassis that you had to deal with, so they owned the center sections, so they sold them, so they made sure that price stayed the same. I mean, it still costs money to travel, but it evened up this playing field, so it really showed talent. So guys that had talent could run good, and the names that were running it throughout the years is just, crazy. Everybody that was somebody went through it, and if you wanted to make a name and you could afford the costs of it, that was your avenue. So without being in NASCAR, so that's what I enjoyed about it. It went some of the great short tracks, put on great shows, and it was endurance. There was long enough races where you had to be smart and have some pit strategy, and so you had that aspect of it. But they weren't live pit stops, for per se, where you had to do it under green, so you weren't going to get, a bunch of wrecks happening where people are coming in and off of these short tracks, So I really enjoyed that part, and I think that was what kept it, for a traveling series, somewhat competitive. And, nothing's more discouraging. You go somewhere and it's like, well, I can't compete because they're cheating. They got these motors, and you got to have that motor to go there. And, you got to have this chassis if you're going to go there. And, so, you virtually had to have the same center section when you went road racing. So, if you wanted to change your stub a little bit, you could. But yeah, that was the neat part of it for me.
Okay. Yeah. So then ASA ends, ASL kind of, becomes a thing. And I think you won the championship of it. Was a 6 race deal or something.
Yep. Yeah. It was pretty, they were just trying to keep it going. That was, what's doing that? That was, I can't remember who pulled that together. Oh, that was Steve Strasburg's dad did that. Yeah.
Okay, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's who pulled that together. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, it was good to try and keep it going, while, everybody had hopes that it was going to stay floating, but fortunately it just drug it out a little farther, so.
Yeah. So after, you had put that, did you put the Craftsman truck together after? Where did that kind of fall in? I think you ran that a couple times, and then then there was the Homestead incident. But
yeah, that was the first year with the Menards ASA team.
Okay,
so that would have been 2003. Yeah.
And so what made you want to put that truck together? Was it because you knew what it took to be fast in the truck series, and now you had a team you could trust?
We had an opportunity with sponsorship from Emerson, so through Menards, so that's where that came about.
Okay,
it was strictly based on sponsorship. So
okay,
it was enough to do the 2 truck races, and so that's what we did. So we went to where did we go? Somewhere before we went to Homestead. I can't remember. We went to one other race.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. I don't remember either. The only thing I remember, but one thing I remember about that truck being built was you guys realizing that it didn't fit in the hauler that you had.
That's right. Yeah.
Because then you bought a race trailer that eventually became my race trailer.
That's right. Because we had to haul that to the track. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it was too tall.
Too tall. Yeah. Yeah, it didn't fit in our semi-trailer. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Wow.
Yeah. Did to cap off the ASA thing and then kind of move into when you kind of came back into to super late model stuff, and then I think then some ARCA stuff as well. Did you end up winning any races when you came back and had the Menard team in your ASA?
We won at Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, that's right. I was there for that one. Okay,
yeah,
I don't know why that one slipped my mind, but yeah.
And I always wanted to win at Milwaukee. Always. I mean, my one race that I always wanted to win was the World Cup 400, but after that was a race in Milwaukee. So yeah, I got to check that box. So that was cool.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, because you were sponsored by Morton Salt, and you're throwing salt around.
Yeah,
and
yeah. That was one of the coolest pictures. We had two. I think it was Les Bach's idea. We had, it was Carl Hartman's idea. They had the salt, and when it pours, so we had to name it. Was like because they were like when it rains, it pours. Because it was iodized salt. Well, we had when we win, it pours. So I'd throw salt all over. So we had that waiting for quite a while before we got to do that.
Yeah, no, I remember you guys had the pictures of like kind of like the step by step as you're doing. That's kind of neat. But yeah, so then kind of moving on. I think it was 2009. You end up building a super late model, but really, what did you kind of end up doing as ASL was ending? And I don't really remember a lot.
We were just trying to figure out what to do with the cars, and I just had so much into them, and now there's not a series, and it was heartbreaking because this was something, we had built something that we almost won the champion. Well, in my mind we won the championship, but we were going to be set. We were going to be the unstoppable team the following year, and now what do you do with it? It's like you go from this ultimate high of having built this team and a crew and great people around you, and you don't want to sell the stuff, and where are you going to sell it, and that was the devastating part. It's like, well, can't have all these cars sitting here taking up space and can't race them anywhere. So we end up selling them, and then, the reality set in that, we're just going to trying to run some super late model stuff. And it was at that point, that was when Swiss Colony was they were the ones that kind of wanted me to get back into doing a little more late model racing, and
because they came on board for the ASL car then that year, right? Okay, I remember that. Yep.
So yeah, Joe Hunter was always a good friend, and and helped get that sponsorship and stuff. So another great person that I met through racing. So there's so many people. You'd list them off for hours.
Yeah, was when you came back then running a super late model in that, that 2009 time frame, obviously you had the ASA late model, but really before that, when was the last time you drove a super late model or had
I don't even remember. It was a while. Yeah.
Because really after you won like the Dixieland 250 in 95, I mean, did you do anything with your late model at that point?
No, it sat still because I think Paul drove it, and then I don't think I ever drove it after that. I don't think I did. Yeah, because I think I sold that. In fact, I know I sold it. So, I don't think I ever raced it again. I knew the downfall of trying to race too much when you're starting a new team. It's just too easy to get distracted, and we were getting into dynoing shocks and getting all that equipment, and we were chassis dynoing and with the ASA stuff, and that was just going to be another level of distraction. So,
yeah, when you came back to super late model racing, I know you end up getting a couple ones. I think one at Madison and Wausau, I think as well. And was super late model racing did it feel a lot different than what it had when you previously left it? And even just like as a technology and stuff that was kind of going on.
It was changing rapidly. And a lot of my guys that helped me, it was we were turning everybody else had kind of gone their way, and Dan was still helping me and coming back and supportive and stuff and chat, and but it was definitely different, and it was it was a new level, it was changing fast. Not only was it just the setups, the cars and chassis were changing, so it was hard to keep up with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of then, after that point, something I don't even really remember when you had started it, but, it was the car that, that I ended up driving for 12-ish years, something like that, 11, 12, 13 years. When did you come up with the idea to build a chassis from the ground up? And honestly, still, I really don't even, when you were started racing a late model, I remember helping, I came around and helped a couple times, but I really never, I was starting to race super late model too, so I never really hung around in the shop when you were doing that at all. Right. And then I remember going in the shop one day and with my dad, and there's a center section there, and what the heck's that? I haven't even heard anything about it. I mean, where did the idea and intent really come for that? Because it's not something that a lot of people really do.
And I knew how much work it was because I spent so much of my younger years building it, building cars with Les and Bac and the rest of them.
Yeah,
it was something I wanted to do with my dad. At the end of the day, I wanted to have something to, when I was growing up, my dad was doing his racing, and he spent a lot of time with him. There was a short period there that when we were in the shop together, and racing together. And then I go down south and I'm racing, so I'm not around my dad again, for a bunch of years. I came back in the ASA thing. He was helping me on the ASA thing. Yeah. And when we went back to that, I just, we were just talking, and how things were changing, evolving. And it was like you had to get the chassis of the week, and we just didn't, I'm talking with my dad. I'm like, I want to race, but I just don't want to, I don't want to be in that, okay, this next year you're going to, this is the greatest stub. You got to cut it off, put that on. And I just didn't want to be by myself on an island because I knew what that created, but I wanted to build something with my dad. I was like, and I knew we could do something really cool and lace them out. It was kind of based on a Bac car anyway, so that portion. But when we got into redoing the geometry in the front, that was my vision, to go back to the days of, but now we're up to, now we got software and we're designing it on a computer,
Right.
So that was fun. My dad was pretty good with computers and software, and, that's what we did. And we had data acquisition systems from the ASA thing, it's like, well, we'll be on our island, but we'll be able to catch up pretty fast because, we got 2 data acquisition systems and shock dyno and all this stuff, and tire rater and all the stuff we had from the ASA team. So that was my main point. It's the only thing. I just wanted to build a chassis with my dad. I just wanted that. So that was the only driving force.
Gotcha. Well, and it turned into benefiting me. So, but yeah, no. So yeah, I was always kind of curious on that because it was kind of one of the things that just kind of it's not something that someone just kind of randomly starts. And yeah, like I said, for me, it was just kind of like it just appeared one day and in the shop, and I was always kind of curious about it. But thinking back about some of the times in your racing career, who you talk about Jim Bac, but who are some of the other people that obviously you grew up racing with and around and watching some of the best to ever do it, undoubtedly. Who are some of the other people that you really enjoyed watching from 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever?
So, I mean, as far as watching, I always felt, lucky to be able to hang around, like watching my dad and Marvin and Jimbo and how those guys raced each other and talked afterwards and amongst themselves. And, even when Mike Miller came around, and those guys together, bought a engine dyno, and they'd all take turns putting an engine on that dyno. And those guys and how they raced, and I was just always in awe at that. You know, when I started racing, you know, there was always somebody clubbing somebody, and you just didn't see it when those guys were racing. There was just, they dominated. You know, there were so many of them, and they kind of made sure that the bad ones never rose to the top, you know, and I just always admired how those guys could race side by side. They didn't wreck their cars. They were never loading anything with the fenders tore off. And yeah, something happened, you know, stuff happened. But as far as just racing each other, that never happened, ever. So,
yeah, just kind of one of those eras in racing that I think a lot of people talk about and appreciate for a lot of the same reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky to race with, you know, a lot of guys that, you know, were fun to race with. You know, I mean, there was, you know, you've had a lot of them on here, you know, Mark Mackesy, and just, I mean, the fun we've had, and, you know, after racing, and, you know, Bobby Weiss was another one we raced. I mean, I hung around a lot at Wagner's, you know, and so I knew a lot of those guys from down there, and, you know, the people around Carl is just utterly amazing. And I can tell you one Carl story that you know, I went down there, and it was in the winter, you know, and I just go down and see Carl. So I go down there, and we're hanging around, and he goes, "Hey, we're going to go to the PRI show." I'm like, okay, I don't even know what a PRI show is, you know. And it's like, you know, and it's like, okay, you know. So he said, we're going to leave in about an hour, you know. So, okay, so we load up in the Suburban, and Dan, Tim, and the rest of the guys, you know, and I knew them all, you know. And heck, I stayed a bunch of nights at Carl's house, and then I stayed with Dan a bunch of nights. There's a guy that doesn't sleep. I've met people, you know, I didn't sleep, but I had to drink Mountain Dew and whatever I could to stay awake. But he's one of those guys that just didn't sleep. I mean, he could live on 2 hours, 3 hours sleep, and get up, look fresh as the day before. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, dude. But anyway, so we load up the Suburban. We're heading, and I don't even know where the PRI show is. So we're driving.
I'm sure you didn't come there with clothes.
Oh, I had no clothes, you know. Yeah, that was the norm, you know. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I went somewhere, and it's just like, well, when we get there, we're going to look for the merchandise shop, and, you know, get a T-shirt at least, and stop at a gas station, get another toothbrush and some toothpaste. So, you know, a lot of hotels had them back then. So
yeah,
I'm sure I stunk along the way somewhere. But yeah, so we're in the Suburban, we're heading there, and then this was a decision late at night. So then I realized we're going to Indianapolis. So we get to Indianapolis, you know, and Carl's like, yeah, well, we're going to get something to eat. It's like, all right, that sounds great. I haven't ate anything, you know. So then he's like, and there's this big bar. We're going to go to this big bar. It's like, okay. So we go in this big bar, and it was huge. I don't know, there was a bunch of dance floors and whatever. And we're going along, and I'm like, where are those guys, you know? And it was a big place. I couldn't find them, you know. I should be able to find one of them, you know. And after a while, I realized they ain't there. So I walked out to where they parked the Suburban. Suburban's gone. You got to be kidding me. I'm in Indianapolis at this bar. I don't even know where where Carl's staying. And I'm like, after a few drinks and being tired, he forgot he brought me down there. So they just went to the hotel. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going to go. So I'm like, all right. So I was have another drink, close this place up and see what happens, you know. And so I'm sitting at the bar, and this guy comes up next to me and orders a drink. I look over, he's got a race shirt on, and I'm like, I said, you a racer? He goes, yeah. He goes, oh, where are you from? He goes, Wisconsin. I'm like, Wisconsin? He goes, where are you from? I said, Wisconsin. And he was Jerry Radetsky. He champ oil pans, and he built oil pans for Carl. And so I started laughing, and I was like, yeah, I rode down here with Carl, and he left me here. I don't even know where I'm staying. He's laughing. That sounds like Carl. He goes, well, you can stay with me tonight, and we'll find Carl at the show tomorrow, you know. So we go back. So I'm riding with Jerry, you know. I said, I'm going to sleep on the floor in his room, you know. And it's like, we get to the hotel, and I walk in, and there's Mike, one of Carl's guys, and he's sitting in the bar, and I'm like, thanks for leaving me, He's like, oh, we forgot you were with us. And then we were like, Carl's like, I'm too tired to go back and get him. But anyway, it all worked out well in the end. But yeah, them were some of the adventures with Carl. Everything was always an adventure with Carl. So
yeah, definitely. I haven't heard a bad story yet about Carl Wegner.
No. My dad warned me never to ride with him, and I made the mistake once of riding with him. I think it was Scott Hansen was coming, or maybe it was Rich Bickle. Somebody was coming to get a motor, and I worked a lot down there. I was mainly working to get a motor, I didn't have much money, and Carl, he had a I don't know, it was a 55 or 57 Chevy, and of course it had a Wagner, built engine, it'd go like heck. And he told, I think it was Hanson, he says, I'll give you to the end of the driveway. We're going to go eat lunch. He said, I'll give you a head start to the end of the driveway, but the loser's buying everybody's lunch. Well, there's a bunch of Wagner's guys, and Scott had a couple of guys. And so he got to the end of the driveway, and then Carl lit that Chevy up, and I'm like, we're roaring down the driveway, and his little two-lane road he lives on. I'm like, are we going to slow down to turn? Nope. You drop two wheels down into the ditch. We drop down in there. We launch up onto the road, slid across into the. He hasn't let off the gas yet, and back up on the road. And we passed him before we got a half a mile down the road. I'm just like, you're out of your mind. Oh my gosh, that is crazy.
Yeah, I think there's a couple days, I can't remember what they were. I know one was his, or maybe it was just his birthday, but I remember when Father Gruba was here talking, he said you never ride with Carl on his birthday because he had a lot of bad luck on his birthday. So yeah.
But I mean, I look at that shop, what it was from it started. I mean, this had that little bitty shop, and Carl just he had that little room. He ported and polished all the heads himself. I mean, he did it all. It was just crazy. And if he liked you, he spent a little extra time on your heads. So you got a few extra horsepower. So
yeah,
he's a crazy guy. So
cool. Man, is there anything that, looking back at anything in your racing career that you would have done any differently, or made any change along the way?
I guess my first thing I probably would have changed would have been, I looked at like when Kenseth made his move. He went with Robbie Reiser went down first, and he took all his guys, so he had a solid foundation around him when they started. And if there's anything that, and maybe the opportunity would have never arose, but to have myself surrounded with the people that I knew and trusted, I think
Sure.
It would have paid dividends early. Because when you're trying to learn something and you don't have the support all the way around, it's tough. And that would have been one thing, but here you're wishing for an opportunity, but then you want it to be this absolute perfect one, it's probably never going to come,
Right.
So, but and then the only other things I've ever regretted was to not know when to quit. It was like the ASA thing. I hung on to those cars forever and should have dumped them as soon as I could. And it's just, sometimes your racer's his worst enemy. He just leads with his heart and his desire to race instead of his, business sense. Maybe none of us had it, and probably why we race. So
Yeah.
yeah, those are two things that, financially, it's like, why put yourself in such a hole sometimes? And I see it so often that people race beyond their capability, and it's because it's addiction, you just want to race, so it's tough, I mean, when you spend your life living with adrenaline in your blood and you try to stop and turn it off, it's hard. I mean, it's not just hard in the sense of saying it. It's hard in the sense that your body's trying to change. I mean, when I quit and dropped out, I had one of the guys that was on my crew with the Felon called me up, and he was an old track, a flat track racer, motorcycle. And, you know how crazy those guys are, no brakes on those things. He was from Europe. And he called me, and he's like, how you doing? He goes, I heard you quit. I'm like, doing good. He goes, "No, really, how you doing?" I'm like, "What are you getting at?" He goes, "I know what it's like when you quit. It's cold turkey, it's just your body wants adrenaline. You want to go do something, He says, "You need to go jump out of a plane or something, And I'm just like, and I never really thought about it, because you get kind of crabby and, and just like, yeah, this whole world's changing. It's not what you've used to, and you don't have that rush of the adrenaline. That's kind of something a person doesn't think about all the time."
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah, no, it's really true. It's it's something that a lot of people don't experience, but when it's a constant, consistent. I mean, it's winters up here get long, and you start really the fire starts burning, and you can't wait to put it to the floor again.
All right.
Yeah. Kind of on similar note, obviously there was that World Crown 400. Is there any other race that you wish you could have won, or even any other track that you've never made it to that you wish you could have got a shot at doing?
Only one I ever wanted was that World Cup 400. It's the only one I ever wanted. Wanted it so bad. Yeah. That was the only one. I just wanted that. I wanted that record book to have Tom Reffner early on, and then me in there. That was the only one. The rest of them were just fun to race, And I never had any other one. I got to go to Daytona with the trucks, and
I suppose, yeah, yep.
And so that would have been a highlight that I was able to do. But yeah, beyond that, that was the only one. Everything else was just icing on the cake to just be able to race and do it. But yeah, that was the only one I tried so hard. I mean, that one almost killed me, because All Pro didn't allow lead in the cockpit. Well, we had to have so much lead on that Bac car, we had poured lead that filled the floor pan, and it was legal around here. So we decided that, we got to paint that. Well, back then we used Imron paint, and it was a 2-part epoxy paint. You sprayed it with a regular paint gun, and it was it was the only thing that would hold up, chip resistant and wear resistant, and it's a DuPont product. And so unfortunately it's a 2-part. Well, we didn't mix the 2 parts, and we brushed it on the lead on the inside, so it matched the rest of the frame. You couldn't tell it. It's under the seat and under like your foot brace there, So we just didn't want them to see it. Well, we got in that race. I think it was the year I finished 5th. We were running really good, and that stuff started gassing off. It never hardened, and it started smoking in the cockpit paint, And I'm like, I started hallucinating, and I'm like, I'm trying to focus, and I'm running 5th at I-70 or 70, running 100 and some miles an hour down the straightaway, and I'm like, I can't really tell what's going on, and my brother was. I was like, you gotta get somebody to take over. I don't think I'm gonna make it, I think my brother was they'd line my brother up to jump in the car, or somebody else really? If somebody else fell out or whatever. But I ended up, typical racer. I mean, I guess I'm still breathing. I'll run it until I die, But I virtually fell out of the car after that. It was terrible. But yeah.
How long did it take you to feel right again? I mean,
well, maybe some people say never. I don't know.
Yeah.
A long time. It virtually would poison me. I mean,
that's what I was wondering. Yeah,
it was a long time, but it was months before I actually felt where I could breathe good again.
Oh, so, no kidding. Okay, so I suppose
it was toxic as all get go. I mean, it'd just be like taking some nasty paint, epoxy paint, and putting it in a furnace, and because it was so hot. I mean, Odessa was in the middle of Missouri, it was 100 and some degrees when we raced, and they had all that engine heat and stuff, so it started cooking it up. Yeah. Great.
Not recommended, huh?
No, that's one of those live and learn and, pay the penalty dearly programs. So, yeah, along with all your wrecks and, that you pay the penalty with, so.
Yeah. Any bad wrecks that really stick out to you?
Oh, the Homestead one was the worst.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was the worst. Broke my foot. 5 metatarsal bones in my right foot. And, and that was right in the middle of my ASA Menard thing, right? That was the last year or the last race of the year in November. And so I walked around with a cast, and I'm like, this has got to come off before next year. So, yeah.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize the timing there. Yeah, I just remember getting a color on the cast. That's it.
But yeah, that was terrible. I mean, that was a race where the sun was directly over the turn 4, and you come out of turn 4, you virtually couldn't see anything. You counted in your head how far you had to go before you started turning the wheel. As you coming up to the wall, it was directly in your eyes. I mean, the windshields, after you got a little bit of, road dust and oil on it, you couldn't see nothing. And,
sure.
Then I had, Jason Edmonds, helped me a lot. He was a good spotter, and he's like, go low, go low, go low, because they were crashing up at the top, and I went down low. I couldn't see anything, and then at the very last second, and all of a sudden there comes, Brandon Gaughan right in front of me. So it's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. So, but yeah, that was the worst hit ever. So, they tell you to let go of the steering wheel. Yeah, tell your brain that when you're going to hit the guy broadside,
right.
some miles an hour. So I tried, but no, I hung on to it for everything I had. Bent that steering wheel actually around to it, almost touched. So it was crazy.
Is that the wreck you broke your Hans device in too?
Yeah. Didn't even know you could do that. So
yeah, I remember. You think you still got it? It was a carbon fiber one, and it's all cracked.
Well, and John Menard was the one that actually told me that if I was going to drive for him, I had to have that. It wasn't mandatory, at that time. And so the next year at ASA, the opener down in Florida, they had that Dr. Hans there. They introduced him, and they were promoting the Hans device. They were trying to get people to. I don't know why they were so worried about, forcing people to implement safety stuff. And it's like, I just never understood that, Racers are their own worst enemy. They're not going to spend money on anything to save their life, unless you tell them they have to, that's a set of tires, It's like, I got to buy that, and I went up to him, and I'm just like, man, because at that time, NASCAR had black boxes, so they tracked, the crash, so they actually have they had doctors that studied it, and then that doctor calls you, and they walk you through the data, and they tell you what it's like. I don't even remember how many story building he said it was like, falling off the G's that I developed when I hit, and then they tell you that the duration of that G, how long you endured that, is what they really look at. And the duration I endured, it was quite long. And he's like, it's a hard hit, and so I was telling that guy, I didn't have, my neck didn't hurt. I had other things. My shoulders were hurt. I had severed a nerve in my spine from the shoulder harnesses and stuff. But I went up and told him, I don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for you, and I told him about the hit. And he actually had data. He had access to that data. And he goes, well, how's your Hans device? I'm like, what do you mean, how's that? Is it great? And he goes, well, I've seen somebody else that hit so-and-so, and it crushed the carbon fiber on the back. And I'm like, how could you break carbon fiber with your head, And it's like, well, I went back and looked at it. I'm like, holy cow, it was just completely shattered. And I'm like,
yeah, that
was crazy. I didn't even know you could do that with your head, just going forward, but so yeah, that was really I can't imagine. I'm guessing I would have probably been, like Tony, Roper, I would probably had the same injury, so lucky I had it at that time.
Yeah, looking for Dr. Hans.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, but then they had somebody for so long, Unfortunately, it takes, somebody like Dale Earnhardt, to lose somebody of that caliber before they decide they're going to make people wear these things. So
yeah,
sad.
Yeah. It always takes some sort of tragedy to make some sort of improvement, sadly. But
yeah,
way a lot of things go.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I've sure enjoyed a lot of these stories and heard parts and pieces that I've never heard before. So it's yeah, it was, like I said, it was great to be able to do this and be able to put this out on the same day that they're kind of honoring Grandpa, your dad at Oktoberfest next week. And yeah, it'll be a good time to release it, and glad we were able to kind of make it all work.
Thanks for having me on. So yeah, there's endless stories when you race that long, and I mean, we were part of the guys that were known for carrying the party on. So I still don't understand what we did, how much we could talk about, and sit in a bar after a race, and that was never enough. Yeah, you had Royce on. After the Dells, we go to abandoned gas station and sit there for another 3-4 hours. I think about that now. I'm like, what on earth could we talk about for so long? But we did it every Saturday. But I mean, those are the other ends of the spectrum on enjoyment of racing, that there's just endless things you learn and experience. So yeah, I got to share some.
Yeah. Joe Miller, I think he said he would come on if I had you on at the same time. So I'll get a third microphone and see what we can do. And
yeah, we'll have to check the statute of limitations on them stories, because they're
Well, you just say allegedly and then you're fine.
Yeah. Well, there'll be a lot of allegedly. Joe was a key to my championship year in ASA. He truly was. You brought up his name. I mean, one, a great friend. Two, he was the key piece that we needed to win a championship. When you raced ASA, you changed 2 tires most of the time. You hardly ever changed 4.
Okay.
And I struggled horribly to get stagger. We would change 2 tires, and we would miss stagger, And once Joe came on board in that 95 year, unbelievable change, just to be able to pick right. You come in and pit and you're back out, or if you need adjustment, he would make that adjustment, and just a tremendous asset to the crew. And it was one of those things you talk about, having a setup and motors and all that. That was important, but that guy's importance was as high as all those, because you couldn't win without him. So yeah. And
then did he help on the Menard team too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. I remember that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, when Joe's around, Elvis is nearby, so that was always his thing, and it was just kind of a quick story on how they would get me in the right mindset to start the race. And Joe, well, if there was karaoke, where there was Elvis to be sung, but at the start of a race, Joe would always say, hey, Elvis, what you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to win that race. That's
pretty funny.
That's how we started off every ASA race. So, yeah, hey, Elvis, what you going to do? So, yeah, pretty funny. But, that was just the crew we had. We lived life large, and it was cool.
Well, that's better than Pete Waldvogel coming up to you and jabbing you in the helmet. You're strapped in.
Yeah. Pete's another fantastic friend, fantastic. Yeah. His stories we definitely can't talk about, so.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll have the opportunity to get some of those guys on here and figure something out. So.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening in to Speed and Grease. If you're a returning listener, I appreciate you tuning into another episode. And if it was your first time tuning into the show, I hope you enjoyed it and want to keep coming back for more. And if you haven't already, make sure you head on over to Facebook, Instagram, like and follow us on one of those platforms wherever you prefer, even on X as well. And if you watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, make sure you head on over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel there to stay up to date on everything. And also, if you want, give us a rating and review over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well. Thank you again for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you in the next one.